College of Winterhold. By the next day afternoon, a train pulled into the station at Winterfell. From its polished cars disembarked Princess Visenya Targaryen, along with her companions, Viella Celtigar and Lisa Hayford, and the rest of her retinue. The air hummed with anticipation as they were formally greeted by Prince Rickon Stark and his family, including the newly awakened Cregan himself, who observed the arrival with a keen, analytical gaze. Stepping forward from the welcoming party was Mordred Stark, Cregan's aunt, her face alight with an uncharacteristic warmth. Beside her stood her husband, Artos Skoll, a sturdy, quiet man, and their daughter and son, who stood respectfully. As soon as the formal introductions were made, a burst of genuine affection broke through the courtly decorum. Visenya, her violet eyes shining, rushed forward and embraced Mordred tightly. "Aunt Red," she exclaimed, her voice filled with delight. "How are you?" Mordred returned the hug with equal fervor, a rare, soft smile gracing her lips. "I'm fine, sweetling, how are you? Gods, you were up to my knees the last time I saw you." She pulled back slightly, looking Visenya over. "How was the travel, and how are Rhaenyra and your brothers doing?" Visenya, beaming, assured her, "Everything is fine, Aunt. The travel was long, but comfortable. Mother sends her regards, and my brothers are, well, they're brothers." A small, knowing smile touched her lips, hinting at the typical chaos of princely siblings. Mordred chuckled, then turned to her own children, drawing them forward. "Visenya, these are my children. This is my daughter, Lyanna, and my son, Beric." The children bowed politely, their expressions a mixture of shyness and curiosity as they met the Targaryen princess who would soon be learning at Winterhold. The warmth of the reunion, though fleeting, seemed to cut through the formal stiffness of the arrival, promising a more personal connection during Visenya's time in the north. For 3 days, Winterfell hummed with a quiet excitement. Princess Visenya Targaryen spent most of her time with her aunt Mordred Stark, exploring every nook and cranny of the ancient castle and marveling at the bustling, steam-powered Wintertown. Mordred, with her characteristic blend of northern practicality and unexpected warmth, delighted in showing Visenya the intricacies of Winterfell's defenses, the roaring forges, and the orderly chaos of the market streets, a stark contrast to the stifling court of King's Landing. Visenya, eager and bright, absorbed every detail, her violet eyes wide with wonder at the innovations that defined Asgard. Cregan, though silently observing, took note of Visenya's keen intelligence and her genuine connection with his aunt. Finally, on the 4th day, the time came for Visenya to begin her formal education. Accompanied by her companions, Viella Celtigar and Lisa Hayford, and guided by Mordred Stark, along with Cregan Stark, made their way to Winterhold College. For Cregan, the journey felt momentous. It was the first tangible step into his new, awakened life. For Visenya, it was the start of a journey much like her mother's. The education awaiting Visenya at Winterhold was precisely the same comprehensive, cutting-edge curriculum that Rhaenyra had received years prior. It encompassed not just the classical histories and languages, but also the sciences, engineering, statecraft, strategy, and combat training that made Winterhold College truly unique in Westeros. The goal was to forge not just a learned princess, but a capable and well-rounded leader, prepared for the complexities of a changing world. Visenya, eager to learn and removed from the southern court's suffocating politics, embraced her new studies with a zeal that promised to make her a formidable student. A year passed swiftly in the invigorating halls of Winterhold College. Princess Visenya Targaryen, a diligent and eager student, had absorbed the northern teachings with remarkable speed. Her intellect blossomed under the tutelage of Winterhold scholars, and her spirit thrived in the robust, unvarnished environment, so different from the veiled intrigues of King's Landing. Cregan, while focusing on his own rigorous physical and intellectual training, had observed her development with a detached, yet curious, interest, noting her sharp mind and growing confidence. Then, word came from the south. After a year of intense study, Princess Visenya returned to Dragonstone, the ancestral seat of House Targaryen, leaving the progressive north behind once more. She returned to find a court in turmoil, her mother, Rhaenyra, facing a fresh wave of vulnerability. A profound tragedy struck Driftmark. Laenor Velaryon, Rhaenyra's husband, was found murdered. The Whispers quickly named Carl Corey, his longtime companion, as the culprit. Though Carl initially vanished, he was later hunted down, brought to justice, and his head was removed, a stark warning to any who would defy the crown or its family. The sudden, brutal death of her husband, coupled with the ever-present rumors about her son's parentage and the escalating animosity with Queen Alicent's faction, left Rhaenyra in a precarious position. She was a crown princess with no consort, her political standing weakened, her children's claims continuously questioned. Then Rhaenyra made a drastic, yet pragmatic, decision. She married her uncle, Daemon Targaryen. The marriage was a quiet affair, a union born of necessity and ambition rather than affection. It shocked the realm, stirring renewed controversy and fueling the flames of discontent among those who already doubted Rhaenyra's legitimacy. But for Rhaenyra, it was a move to secure her claim, to present a united, dragon-backed front against her enemies, even if it meant sacrificing a measure of her own happiness for political stability. The dance of the dragons edged ever closer. In the turbulent years that followed Laena's death and Rhaenyra's controversial marriage to Daemon, the crown princess made a decisive move regarding her children's education. Rhaenyra sent all her children, Jacaerys, Lucerys, and Joffrey, along with Daemon's twin daughters, Baela and Rhaena Targaryen, to Winterhold for their studies. She believed, fiercely, that the progressive and rigorous education of Asgard would better prepare them for the harsh realities of their future, far more effectively than the stifling court of King's Landing. They would gain not just knowledge, but a practical understanding of leadership, strategy, and innovation, just as she and Visenya had. The presence of so many Targaryen heirs in the north further solidified the burgeoning, if complex, alliance between the crown and Asgard. Meanwhile, back in King's Landing, King Viserys I, ever keen on maintaining peace and a fragile semblance of unity, recognized the value of the northern education. Having seen the marked changes in Rhaenyra and heard the glowing reports from Visenya, he urged Queen Alicent to send her children Aegon, Helaena, Aemond, and Daeron, to Winterhold for their studies as well. He hoped that shared experiences, even in a different realm, might foster a sense of camaraderie between the half-siblings, or at least equip them with the skills needed to navigate the treacherous political landscape. However, Queen Alicent vehemently objected. Her distrust of Rhaenyra and anything associated with her ran deep, and the North, with its strange ways and independent spirit, felt alien and threatening to her traditional sensibilities. "There is no need, Your Grace," Alicent stated, her voice tight with thinly veiled disdain. "Our children are princes and a princess of the realm. The maesters of the Citadel are the most learned men in Westeros. They can enjoy the same, if not superior, education here in King's Landing. There is absolutely no need to send them to Asgard, to that peculiar land. They will be safe here, and learn what is proper for their station." Viserys, weary of the constant conflict and ever one to avoid direct confrontation, sighed, but ultimately conceded. Alicent's children remained in King's Landing, their education overseen by the maesters and the septons, steeped in the traditions and doctrines of the South. The divide between the Greens and the Blacks grew wider, not only in political ideology but in the very upbringing and worldview of their future leaders. The North, Asgard, became increasingly the training ground for Rhaenyra's faction, further emphasizing the distinct paths being forged for the future of the Targaryen dynasty. 8 comments 0 vote. Curveball. 129 AC. College of Winterhold. King's Landing felt a growing sense of unease, reflected in the deteriorating health of King Viserys I. The king, long prone to various ailments, was now suffering from an unknown disease that steadily eroded his strength and vitality. His once robust frame became increasingly frail, his skin mottled, and his mind, though still sharp, was often clouded by pain and weakness. The maesters of the Citadel, for all their vast knowledge, were baffled, attributing his decline to a slow, wasting sickness, unable to properly diagnose or effectively treat it. It was Rhaenyra Targaryen, however, who during the initial phase of the king's mysterious illness, made a startling and accurate diagnosis. From her years spent immersed in the comprehensive texts of Winterhold College, where the northern scholars had meticulously documented various diseases and their treatments, she recognized the symptoms as those of leprosy. The knowledge, once a mere academic pursuit, now proved invaluable. Alarmed by the revelation and the maesters' inability to help, Rhaenyra immediately dispatched a desperate request to the north. Her plea was sent to King Stark, who had recently taken up the mantle of King of Asgard after the passing of his father, King Stark. Rhaenyra, remembering the groundbreaking medical advancements of Winterhold, specifically requested a northern healer, one capable of tackling such a grave and complex disease. The call was answered. A skilled northern healer, accompanied by a small retinue of apprentices trained in the advanced medical practices of Asgard, made the long journey to King's Landing. Upon their arrival, they quickly confirmed Rhaenyra's diagnosis. The healer set about treating the king with precision and knowledge far beyond the conventional maesters. Special poultices, carefully compounded elixirs, and specific regimens were administered. While a complete cure was impossible, the northern medicine proved remarkably effective. It stabilized King Viserys' condition, alleviated his pain, and, crucially, gave him medicine which would prevent it from making long-term damage, essentially halting the insidious progression of the disease and buying the king precious time. The king's life was extended, though his health remained fragile. Meanwhile, Far to the north, in the innovative heart of Asgard, Cregan Stark and Visenya Targaryen were in their last year of studies at Winterhold College. They were no longer the green youths who had first arrived. Cregan, under the guise of rigorous personal training, had pushed his body to its limits, honing his physical prowess to match the awakened instincts of Sasaki Kojira. Visenya, too, had matured into a highly intelligent and capable young woman, her mind sharp, her understanding of statecraft and strategy refined by the northern curriculum, but her true talent was in herbology and health treatments. They stood on the precipice of adulthood, prepared to return to their respective realms, unaware of how soon their skills might be tested in the escalating tensions of the south. Cregan Stark Pav. Shit, I thought, a stark contrast to the quiet dignity expected of a Stark prince. So life threw me a curveball, huh? I'd assumed my future would be a quiet one, honing my sword skills in Asgard, far removed from the messy political machinations of the south. But here we were, just like in the damned stories, with a dying king and a brewing storm. The Great Wolf had changed the canvas, but the core players were still there, and the stakes just as high. And now, the Crown Princess's daughter was back in Winterhold with me. When I first saw Visenya arrive, that afternoon years ago, I didn't have any particular feelings for her. She was just another Targaryen princess, silver-haired and violet-eyed, a piece on the board. But as she came back to Winterhold every year, her beauty just increased. It was an undeniable, almost magnetic pull. I wanted to stay as far away from her as possible, to keep our two lives separate, to avoid any entanglement that would drag me into the dance. But I couldn't. Whenever we were in class, my head automatically turned in her direction. It wasn't just her looks, it was the way she absorbed the lessons, her sharp questions, the quiet determination in her eyes. She was Rhaenyra's daughter, yes, but she was also a product of Asgard, a blend of northern pragmatism and Targaryen fire. And that, I realized with a groan, was the real curveball. I also know she has feelings for me. I see the way she looks at me whenever she thinks I'm not looking at her. A quick, lingering glance, a softness in her violet eyes. It's in the way she always approaches me for every small thing, seeking out my opinion, my help, my mere presence. And then there's the way she asks, in that soft, almost hesitant, cute way of hers. Gods, how can you say no to that? It's a trap, I know it, but one I seem to be walking into, day by day, year by year. The more I try to distance myself, the closer she seems to get. And the harder it is to push her away. The weight of the decision pressed on me, a heavy cloak woven from foresight and yearning. 2 weeks. 2 weeks until Winterhold released us, until the path diverged once more. I replayed the scenarios in my mind, the countless dangers, the political minefield I knew was coming. It was the sensible choice to step back, to remain aloof, to safeguard Asgard and my own quiet existence. But then, the phantom chill of that past life, the dull, aching emptiness of a life unlived, washed over me. The 1906, the endless, passionless days. The thought of deliberately choosing that kind of emotional barrenness again, even cloaked in the noble guise of prudence, made my stomach churn. I looked at my hand, flexing the fingers that held the ghost of Kojira's mastery. I had been given a gift, a chance for something extraordinary. And here was something extraordinary, right in front of me, in the form of a silver-haired princess with violet eyes and a disarmingly cute way of asking for things. A slow, defiant grin spread across my face. Caution be damned. Calculations be damned. The future was coming whether I liked it or not, and I wouldn't spend this life hiding from it, or from a chance at something real. You know what? I murmured to the empty room, a laugh bubbling up from deep within me. Fuck it. The decision, once so heavy, now felt liberating. I would go to her. I would confess my feelings. Whatever may happen in the future, whatever chaos the dance of the dragons might bring, it would happen. But I wouldn't face it with regrets about what I hadn't dared to do. I had a second chance at life, and by the gods, I was going to live it. I squared my shoulders, a newfound resolve burning in my chest. Fuck it. The words still echoed in my mind, a silent vow. The time for hesitation was over. I started my search for Visenya. My instincts, or perhaps Kojira's sharpened senses, led me to one of the college's quieter courtyards, bathed in the soft afternoon light. There she was, seated on a stone bench beneath a budding weirwood sapling, engaged in quiet conversation with her companions, Viella Celtigar and Lisa Hayford. I approached them, my footsteps light. Princess Visenya, I began, my voice steady, might I have a word with you? Just the two of us. Visenya's violet eyes widened slightly, a flicker of surprise, then something else, anticipation, dancing within them. She glanced at her companions, who exchanged subtle, knowing looks. Of course, Cregan, she replied, her voice soft. I offered her my hand, and she took it, her fingers surprisingly cool against mine. I led her away from the bench, not too far, but enough that our voices would be lost to the gentle breeze and the sounds of the college. Her companions watched us, their expressions a mix of curiosity and discreet amusement. They could see us clearly, but the distance and the faint rustle of the budding leaves ensured their ears would catch nothing. When we were alone, the soft murmur of the college fading behind us, I turned to face her, the beating of my heart suddenly loud in my ears. I turned to face her, the beating of my heart suddenly loud in my ears. The words, so clear in my head moments ago, now felt thick and clumsy on my tongue. I swallowed, trying to find my voice. Visenya, I started, and then my throat seemed to seize. I cleared it, trying again. Visenya, I know this is sudden, and perhaps foolish, but I have to say it. My gaze flickered to her face, then down to my fidgeting hands, then back to her eyes, which were wide with an unreadable mix of curiosity and something I hoped was akin to warmth. For a long time now, I stammered, feeling heat rise to my cheeks, since you started coming back to Winterhold each year. I've found myself watching you. In class, in the halls. And I've come to feel things for you. My voice trailed off, hoping she understood the unspoken weight of feelings. I think I've fallen for you, Visenya. Her reaction was immediate. A delicate flush bloomed across her cheeks, a vivid contrast to her pale skin. Her violet eyes, usually so composed, darted nervously before settling on mine. She took a breath, her lips parting, but no sound came out. She bit her lip, then tried again, her own voice barely above a whisper. Cregan, she began, her own words catching. I also. She trailed off, blushing even deeper. Then, with a sudden surge of courage, she met my gaze directly. I also have feelings for you, Cregan. I thought perhaps I was imagining it. A profound wave of relief washed over me, so strong I felt my shoulders sag slightly. I hadn't realized how tense I was until that moment. I let out a long, slow breath. Thank the gods, I murmured, a genuine, unburdened smile spreading across my face. Listen, Visenya, I said, stepping a little closer. This is big. And the world out there, it's complicated. So, for now, let's keep this a secret between ourselves. When the time is right, when we're older, and the realm is less volatile, I will ask my parents and your parents for permission to marry you. It was a bold promise, a stark departure from my earlier plans of avoiding the dance, but one I now felt compelled to make. She nodded, her eyes shining, a soft smile mirroring mine. We stood there for a while longer, talking quietly about our feelings, the shared glances, the unspoken moments, the blossoming affection that had grown between us in the quiet halls of Winterhold. It was a sweet, dizzying conversation, filled with a sense of boundless possibility. Finally, a more practical thought occurred to me. This is our last year at Winterhold, I said, a touch of sadness mingling with the joy. What are your plans after this, Visenya? She thought for a moment, then brightened. I'll be speaking with my mother for permission to stay 4 more years. I want to specialize in herbology and advanced health treatment here. There's so much more to learn beyond what the maesters in the south know. I nodded, impressed by her ambition and her dedication. That's an excellent idea. The medical advancements here are truly unparalleled. I paused, a new path opening in my own mind. And I think I'll also take a specialization. Perhaps in advanced engineering. There's a lot to learn in the workshops, to understand the intricacies of our steam engines and new inventions. It will only strengthen Asgard. We talked for a while longer, envisioning our continued studies, the years stretching out before us in the familiar comfort of Winterhold. Eventually, as the afternoon sun began to dip lower, we knew we had to return to our separate lives, our secret held tight between us. We shared a lingering look, a silent promise, and then, with a new lightness in my step, we went our separate ways, the future suddenly feeling far less uncertain, and far more exciting. 10 comments 0 vote. Curveball 2 R18. 129 AC. Winterhold. As the final year of their initial studies at Winterhold College drew to a close, the time for departure arrived. Visenya returned to the south, to the volatile embrace of Dragonstone and her mother's court. The separation was a quiet ache, a stark reminder of the distances that still lay between them. However, the north had taken root in Visenya's heart, and her ambition to learn the advanced medical arts was sincere. After earnest conversations with her mother, Visenya secured her mother's permission to return to Winterhold the following year to continue her studies. Her return was met with a shared, unspoken relief between her and Cregan. With Visenya back, and with his own understanding of the looming conflicts, Cregan also continued his studies in Winterhold, dedicating himself to the intricate world of engineering. The decision allowed him to further hone his skills while staying close to the woman who was quickly becoming central to his life. During their extended time in Winterhold, they discreetly cultivated their burgeoning relationship. They spent countless hours together, ostensibly focused on their studies, but truly savoring each other's presence. They explored the college's vast libraries, worked side by side in the workshops, and shared quiet moments observing the northern lights from the observatory. Their understanding deepened, their affection blossomed, and their secret became a precious bond, strengthening with every shared laugh and knowing glance. They were learning, growing, and falling more deeply in love, all while the distant drums of war in the south grew steadily louder. 132 AC. Cregan Stark Pav. It had been 3 years since Visenya and I started courting, a secret dance woven into the fabric of our Winterhold lives. Tonight, the craving for something more, something adventurous, gnawed at me. The moon was a sliver in the sky, casting long, dancing shadows. It was late, deep into the night. I made my way stealthily towards the building Visenya stayed in, my steps light, accustomed to moving unseen in the dark. Reaching the familiar stone wall, I looked up. Her window, on the first floor, showed a faint, warm glow. The light was still on. Good. With the agility honed by years of training, a silent promise to Sasaki Kojira's legacy, I began to trek the wall. Hand over hand, foot in crack, I scaled the rough stone, the short distance no more challenging than a familiar staircase. In moments, I was at her window. I gave a soft, rhythmic knock. Inside, Visenya's head, probably buried in some ancient herbology text, glanced up. Her violet eyes widened, first with confusion, then with a flicker of disbelief and shock as she saw my face pressed against the pane. Without a second's hesitation, she hurried to the window, pulling it open as quietly as possible. I slipped into the room, the cool night air following me. Before I could even fully straighten, she was upon me, a whirlwind of furious whispers and frantic shoves. She started to hit my chest lightly, her fists balled, a mix of genuine fear and exasperation on her face. "Are you mad, Cregan Stark?" she hissed, her voice barely audible but laced with genuine terror. "How could you be so reckless? What if someone saw you? What if you fell? It's dangerous." She continued to scold me, her hands still pushing against my chest, a palpable relief mingling with her anger. I caught her hands gently. "First floor is nothing, my lady," I said, a grin touching my lips. "I used to climb Winterfell walls since I was 7 years old. This was barely a warm-up." Her protests momentarily subsided as she processed that. I quickly took advantage of the lull. "Now," I said, my voice dropping, "put on something appropriate. We're going out." Her eyes widened again, her anger forgotten in a rush of curiosity. "Out? Where? What do you mean, out? It's the middle of the night, Cregan." I cut her off. "It's a surprise. Just change quickly, and quietly." She stared at me for a moment, then, remarkably, she listened. With a silent sigh, she moved to her wardrobe, pulling out a dark, practical riding dress and a cloak. She changed with surprising speed, her movements swift and efficient. While she dressed, I stood by the open window, scanning the courtyard below. When she was ready, cloak fastened, she looked at me expectantly. "All right," I said, turning to her. "Climb on my back." Her jaw dropped. "Cregan, I will not. That's absurd." Before she could argue further, I took her by the hand, spun her gently, and with a practiced ease, tossed her onto my back, securing her legs around my waist. A surprised yelp escaped her lips, quickly stifled. "Hold on tight," I whispered, then began the careful descent down the wall, Visenya clinging to me like a frightened cat. We reached the ground unnoticed, the shadows our allies. From there, we made our way through the sleeping college grounds, like ghosts in the night. I knew the routines of every guard, every watchman, every sleepy shift change. We slipped past the gates of Winterhold with practiced ease, the guards inside none the wiser. Outside, hidden behind a clump of snow-dusted pines, a horse awaited us, saddled and ready. I had prepared it hours ago, a reliable northern steed. Tonight, we would ride. We vaulted onto the horse, and I kicked off into the silent night. We rode away from the familiar outlines of Winterhold, the cold air a bracing balm against the excitement thrumming through my veins. We galloped north, towards the White Knife River, a place I knew held a secret beauty only revealed under the right light. The ride was exhilarating. Visenya clung to me, her slight weight a warm presence against my back. The thud of the horse's hooves on the frozen ground was the only sound, a rhythmic beat accompanying our silent escape. We passed through hushed forests, the bare branches reaching like skeletal fingers towards the moon, and then out into open plains, the vast northern landscape stretching endlessly under the starlight. Finally, the distant roar grew louder, a deep rumble that promised something grand. We dismounted near a hidden clearing, and I led Visenya by the hand through a small copse of trees. As we emerged, her breath caught in her throat. Before us, illuminated by the pearlescent glow of the moon, which hung high and full in the inky sky, was a breathtaking sight. The waterfall, a massive cascade of ice and roaring water, plunged into the white knife below. In the moonlight, the frozen spray shimmered like a million scattered diamonds, and the mist rising from the depths caught the light, creating an ethereal haze. It was a raw, untamed beauty, unlike anything she would have seen in the manicured gardens of the south. Visenya stood motionless for a long moment, her head tilted back, simply taking in the majestic scene. The shock and indignation of my clandestine rescue had vanished, replaced by pure awe. Cregan, she whispered, her voice barely audible over the rush of the water, it's incredible. The thunder of the waterfall filled the air, a wild symphony under the moon. I moved to the horse, which stood patiently tethered to a nearby pine, and retrieved the supplies I'd prepared. A thick, woven blanket was unfurled on the damp, mossy ground near a relatively sheltered outcrop. I lit a small, shielded lantern, its soft glow chasing away some of the deeper shadows and casting a warm halo around us. Sit, I invited, gesturing to the blanket. Visenya, still awestruck by the cascade, moved gracefully and settled down. I untied a small bundle, revealing slices of smoked venison, hard cheese, and a flask of spiced wine. Feast fit for a princess who climbs walls, I joked, offering her a piece of cheese. She took it, a soft laugh escaping her lips. I certainly wasn't expecting this when I opened my window. Is this what passes for a typical night out in the north? I grinned, only for those who dare to seek it. It's a quiet place. My secret. I wanted to share it with you. It's beautiful, Cregan, she said, her voice soft, her eyes fixed on the moonlit spray. Truly. Thank you for bringing me here. We talked for hours under the watchful moon, the roar of the waterfall a constant, comforting presence. We spoke of our studies, of Winterhold's strange and wonderful contraptions, of the mundane frustrations of academic life. We spoke of our families, of the North and the South, but mostly, we spoke of sweet nothings, the kind of whispered conversations that only two souls falling deeply in love can share. Simple dreams, shared observations, the quiet thrill of just being together, far from prying eyes and weighty expectations. As the moon began its slow descent towards the western horizon, painting the sky with the first hint of dawn, we knew our stolen night had to end. I gathered the supplies, secured the horse, and then we began our silent journey back. The ride back was as smooth as the escape, the horse's hooves muffled by the pre-dawn quiet. We re-entered her room the same way we exited, a shadow slipping through the open window, leaving no trace of our adventure. As I turned to slip back out the window, a soft touch on my hand stopped me. Visenya, her eyes, still luminous from our adventure, met mine. In a swift, unhesitating motion, she rose on her tiptoes, pulled me closer, and pressed her lips to mine. It was a soft, hesitant lip kiss at first, a gentle exploration. But as I felt her warmth, felt the unspoken question in her touch, I reciprocated, my own lips responding, my arms encircling her waist and drawing her close. The kiss deepened, her lips parting under mine, and then, slowly, tentatively, our tongues rolled against each other, a new, intoxicating dance. The world outside the window, the whispering winds, the distant college, all faded into insignificance. There was only the warmth of her body against mine, the taste of her, the urgent press of our mouths. My breath was ragged, the taste of her still on my lips as Visenya pulled back, gasping for air. Her eyes, wide and luminous, met mine, a silent challenge. Then, before I could even fully register the moment, she caught her breath and kissed me again, a hungry, desperate seeking that left no room for thought. She pressed into me, her small hands fisting in my shirt, her body a sudden, urgent weight against mine. The initial softness was gone, replaced by a fierce, demanding passion. It was intoxicating, overwhelming. My own control, thin as ice, threatened to shatter. With a surge of willpower, I broke the kiss, pulling back just enough to create a sliver of space between us. My voice was hoarse, thick with want. If we continue, I managed, my eyes locked on hers, I can't stop anymore. Her answer was immediate, fierce, and entirely unexpected. Then we will not stop, she whispered, her voice barely a breath, before she pounced on me again, her lips reclaiming mine with a raw intensity that stole my breath. The world blurred. There was only the heat of her, the frantic beat of my own heart echoing in my ears, and the desperate urgency of her kiss. When she finally broke free again, her eyes were dark with desire. Without a word, her nimble fingers found the delicate knots on her riding dress. With a practiced ease, she undid them, and the fabric began to slip from her shoulders. It pooled at her feet, a dark whisper on the stone floor, and there she stood, before me, naked as the day she was born, illuminated by the soft glow of the lantern. The sight of her, so utterly vulnerable and yet so undeniably bold, stole the air from my lungs. My own hand went to the hem of my shirt. Without hesitation, I pulled it over my head, tearing it away, and tossed it to the side, letting it fall forgotten on the stone. There was no turning back now. Her dress pooled at her feet, and my shirt lay discarded on the floor. The soft glow of the lantern cast long shadows as we continued to kiss, a desperate, hungry exchange. My hands, no longer bound by fabric, eagerly began to explore her body, tracing the delicate curve of her spine, the soft swell of her hips. Each touch was a silent promise, a deepening of the unspoken desires that had simmered between us for so long. As my lips devoured hers, I felt her hands venture lower, boldly slipping inside my pants, seeking and finding their target. A jolt of primal heat shot through me. Without breaking the kiss, I shifted, my hands finding purchase on her smooth, firm ass. I lifted her effortlessly, her legs wrapping around my waist, and with a few decisive strides, made my way towards the bed. I gently laid her down, the soft mattress yielding beneath her. As she looked up at me, her eyes dark with a mix of anticipation and vulnerability, I quickly shed my pants, letting them fall to the floor with a soft thud. It was then that her hand reached out, firm and warm, enclosing my hard cock. She squeezed gently, then began to rub, a slow, tantalizing motion that sent shivers through me. I leaned forward, kissing her again, my tongue seeking hers. As our mouths met, my left hand moved to her breast, pinching and twisting her left nipple lightly, eliciting a soft, breathless moan from her. Simultaneously, my right hand ventured lower, tracing the delicate skin of her inner thigh before finding her lower lips, and then, with a gentle push, I inserted a finger, feeling the warm, wet welcome. She didn't remain passive. Her hand on my cock intensified its rhythm, a rhythmic jerking that spoke volumes of her desire. We continued this intimate dance of exploration and arousal for a while, a symphony of touch and burgeoning passion. Finally, I broke the kiss, pulling back just enough to meet her gaze, my voice thick with desire. "I'm going to insert it," I whispered, slowly. She nodded, her eyes wide, a silent acknowledgement of both anticipation and the slight apprehension of a first time. Taking a deep breath, I positioned myself. Slowly, deliberately, I began to insert my cock. Her body tensed, and I felt the slight resistance, heard her soft gasp. I paused, allowing her time to adjust, to breathe through the initial discomfort. After a moment, she gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. And then, with agonizing slowness, I began to move, in and out, the rhythm gentle, building, a silent promise of the ecstasy that lay ahead. Having waited for her to adjust, I felt the subtle shift in her body, the easing of her initial tension. Her hands, still clasped around my waist, tightened, pulling me closer. And then, I began to move, slowly at first, then faster, a rhythm building between us. Her gasps turned to soft moans, her fingers digging into my back as our bodies found a cadence, a passionate urgency that filled the small room. The bed springs creaked a quiet protest, unheard amidst the rising crescendo of our breaths. I shifted, rolling us, finding new angles, new depths. We moved from lying face to face, her legs wrapped around me, to me kneeling above her, watching her eyes flutter as I drove into her, then to her climbing atop me, guiding the rhythm with her own eager movements, her hair a silver curtain around us. Each position brought new sensations, new heights of pleasure, until the air grew thick with our shared passion and the scent of our bodies. We came together, a wave of ecstasy crashing over us both, leaving us breathless and trembling, clinging to each other in the aftermath. But the night was long, and the hunger still lingered. After a moment of recovery, a silent glance passed between us, a mutual understanding. We found each other again, drawn back into the fervent dance of desire. We made love 2 more times, each encounter deeper, more primal than the last, until our bodies were thoroughly sated, our minds hazy with exhaustion and exhilaration. Finally, as the first faint hint of dawn began to paint the sky outside the window, we collapsed onto the bed, limbs entangled, breathing in unison. Sleep claimed us quickly, a deep, contented slumber earned through passion and the quiet promise of a secret shared. 8 comments 0 vote. Title at the end. 133 AC. Cregan Stark Pav. The end of our studies at Winterhold was just 3 moons away. Visenya and I were sitting on our usual bench in a secluded corner of the college grounds, talking idly, enjoying the quiet intimacy of our shared secret. All her brothers had already finished their education and returned south, leaving us with a unique sense of peace in their absence. As we talked, a messenger approached at a hurried pace. He bowed, out of breath. "Prince Cregan, Princess Visenya. King Antares requests your presence in Winterfell, urgently." My brow furrowed. What is this about? I asked, a prickle of unease starting in my gut. The messenger shook his head. I don't know, my prince. Only that his grace commanded me to bring you both immediately. I turned to Visenya. We'll leave in an hour, I told her, my voice calm despite the sudden knot in my stomach. Why would my grandfather summon us so abruptly? My mind raced through possibilities. Had he found out about us? Our secret relationship? Or was it something else, something far more grave? The urgency in the messenger's tone suggested a weightier matter. We made the journey to Winterfell in under an hour, the train speeding across the familiar snowy landscape. As soon as we arrived, we made our way directly to my grandfather's solar. The guard outside, recognizing us, announced our presence without delay. Inside, King Stark sat at his desk, his expression chillingly grim. My blood ran cold. This wasn't about us. This was about the world outside Asgard's safe borders. Grandfather, I said, bowing, with Visenya curtsying beside me. You sent for us. He nodded, his gaze heavy. Cregan, Visenya, welcome. His voice was devoid of its usual warmth. He then held out a letter to Visenya. This is for you, princess. Visenya took the letter, her brow furrowed in intrigue as she broke the seal. As she read, her face became a canvas of rapidly shifting emotions. Initial intrigue, then a sadness, which swiftly morphed into rage, and then, uncontrollably, tears. The letter dropped from her trembling fingers. Without a word, a choked sob escaping her, she spun around and bolted from the room. Visenya, I called out, my heart leaping into my throat. What happened? But she didn't listen, running out of the solar, her footsteps echoing down the hall, then fading. I turned back to my grandfather, my stomach twisting. Grandfather, what happened? Antares looked at me, his gaze solemn. Cregan, King Viserys is dead. The words hit me like a physical blow. Viserys is dead. I knew instantly what that meant. The dance. It was here. It was upon us. Antares continued, his voice heavy with the grim details. Prince Aegon has usurped the crown. He has been proclaimed king and sits on the Iron Throne, unlawfully taking Crown Princess Rhaenyra's rightful position. A fresh wave of cold dread washed over me. And, Lucerys Velaryon was injured. He was attacked near Stormlands. By Aemon Targaryen. The final blow. Lucerys. Injured. He should be dead. That was the flashpoint of the civil war in the old timeline. This timeline changed because of Theon Stark. Because of the Winterhold medicine, Viserys lived an additional 4 years. In the original timeline, he would be dead in 129 AC. Maybe the size of Lucerys's dragon increased. That's why he could have escaped death. My chest tightened with a mixture of grief and an unsettling sense of inevitability. All my hopes for a quiet life, a safe distance from the chaos, shattered around me. Grandfather, I said, my voice strained, may I have leave? He simply nodded, his eyes understanding. Go, Cregan. I turned and left the solar, the grim news echoing in my mind, the urgent need to find Visenya and understand the full scope of the disaster overriding everything else. The dance of the dragons had begun. And this time, I was living it. I found Visenya in the Godswood, a solitary, heartbroken figure huddled by the ancient heart tree. She sat with her knees drawn up, her face buried in her hands, her silver hair spilling over her shoulders as silent sobs racked her slender frame. The raw grief emanating from her was a stark contrast to her usual composed demeanor. I approached quietly, my footsteps barely disturbing the snow. I sat down beside her on the cold ground and, without a word, wrapped an arm around her shoulders. She stiffened for a moment, then recognized my touch. With a choked cry, she turned, burying her face against my chest, her tears hot against my tunic. I held her, stroking her hair, whispering what little comfort I could. It's all right, Visenya, let it out, I'm here. But she just cried, a torrent of grief for her murdered brother and the betrayal of her house. Time seemed to stretch, measured only by the intensity of her sobs. Eventually, her tears dried up, leaving her shuddering against me, exhausted but still raw. She pulled back slightly, her eyes red-rimmed but now focused, a desperate fire burning within them. Cregan, she rasped, her voice hoarse, what will happen now? What will happen to my mother? To Jace, to Luke, to Joff, to Baela and Rhaena, and to me, what will happen to us? Her questions tumbled out, each one laced with fear and uncertainty, touching on the very future I had seen, the future I had hoped to avoid. My heart ached seeing her so broken. I knew the answers, the terrible, bloody answers, but I couldn't speak them. Everything will be okay, Visenya, I said, the words feeling hollow even to my own ears. But she saw through the platitude immediately. Her eyes welled up again, fresh tears beginning to fall. No, she whispered, shaking her head. It won't. I know it won't. I couldn't bear to see her cry anymore. The sight of her despair, the knowledge of the horrors that awaited her family, shattered my carefully constructed neutrality. My own emotions, long suppressed by foresight and pragmatism, surged forth. I pulled her closer, my voice low and fierce, imbued with the ancient power of my lineage and the desperate conviction of my love. Listen to me, Visenya, I said, looking her directly in the eyes. I, Cregan Stark, swear to you now, by the old gods, by the heart tree that stands before us, my grip tightened on her shoulders, my gaze unwavering. I will make sure they all will be okay. And your mother will sit on the Iron Throne. I swear it. It was a stark oath, a vow made before the ancient gods, a promise that bound me to her fate and to the coming conflict. There was no going back now. The dance had truly begun, and I, the quiet observer, was now a player. I gently led Visenya from the godswood, her steps still faltering from exhaustion and grief. We found an empty chamber within Winterfell, one with a comfortable bed. I helped her settle, pulling a thick fur blanket over her. She was utterly spent, her eyes closing almost immediately as she surrendered to sleep. Leaving her to her much-needed rest, I made my way through the castle, my thoughts now fully consumed by the grim news. I headed towards my grandfather's solar, knowing precisely what I would find there. I requested permission from the guards outside, and after a moment, was ushered in. The air inside was thick with tension, palpable even before I fully stepped into the room. As I expected, the key figures of the Stark family were gathered. My grandfather, King Antares Stark, sat at his chair, his face still grim. Beside him were my father, Rickon Stark, and my uncle, Bernard Stark. Their expressions mirrored my own heavy heart. They were undoubtedly discussing the war which was now inevitable in the south. My entrance seemed to pause their grim discussion. I walked to the table, my gaze meeting my grandfather's. The news of Viserys's death, Lucerys's injury, and Aegon's usurpation had solidified my resolve. I had made a vow, and now it was time to lay my cards on the table. Grandfather, I began, my voice clear and steady, there is something I must tell you all. Visenya and I, we love each other. I looked around the table, meeting the surprised, then assessing, gazes of my father, my uncle, and my aunt. And I hope to marry her, with your blessing. My grandfather, Antares, studied me for a long moment, his grim expression softening almost imperceptibly. Then, a slow nod. You can marry her, Cregan. A wave of relief washed over me, so potent it nearly made me sag. I hadn't realized how much tension I'd been holding until that moment. I let out a silent sigh of gratitude. Then, his voice, though still calm, hardened with an unmistakable finality. However, Antares continued, his gaze sweeping over each of us, Asgard will not take part in the wars of the south. We will not be sending support for the blacks. Grandfather Antares's words hung in the solar, heavy and unyielding. The relief I'd felt moments before, at his blessing for Visenya and me, curdled into a cold dread. This wasn't just about our future anymore, it was about the future, a future I knew far too well, a future of fire and blood that would consume everything. Grandfather, you cannot mean that, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. This isn't just some squabble. This is usurpation. King Viserys named Rhaenyra his heir. Aegon's claim is unlawful. If we stand by, we legitimize a false king. My father, Rickon, stepped forward, his expression weary. Cregan, we have discussed this at length. Theon Stark fought to free us from the south, to make Asgard an independent kingdom. Are we to throw that all away for a Targaryen quarrel? Their wars are not ours. But it affects us. I countered, gesturing vaguely south. If the Greens win, if Aegon sits the Iron Throne, what then? Do you think they will respect Asgard's independence? Do you think they will forget that Rhaenyra, the rightful queen, was educated here, that Visenya is here? They will see us as a threat, a bastion of their enemies. It was Uncle Bernard who spoke next, his tone practical. Cregan, we have spent decades building Asgard. Our industries, our infrastructure, our alliances within the North itself. A war with the South would drain our resources, halt our progress, and cost countless Northern lives. But think of the opportunity. I pleaded, my voice rising. A grateful Queen Rhaenyra, once on the Iron Throne, would be a staunch ally. The alliance forged by the Great Wolf would be stronger than ever. We could solidify our independence, expand our influence without direct conflict, simply by helping the rightful heir. Grandfather Antares finally spoke, his eyes stern. We are kings of Asgard, Cregan, not vassals to the Iron Throne. Our primary duty is to our people, to protect them. The Great Wolf ensured that we would never again be dragged into the Southern Wars. To abandon that principle now, for a crown we do not seek in a war not our own, would be a betrayal of his legacy. His legacy was foresight and strength. I retorted, frustration bubbling. He saw the threat of the south and broke away. Now, a different threat emerges, a threat of instability that will eventually spill into Asgard, regardless of our neutrality. A united, just realm under Rhaenyra is our best defense against that instability. And if Rhaenyra loses? Father Rickon interjected, his voice quiet but firm. If we commit our forces, our airships, our dragons even, and she falls, we would be crushed. Our independence would be lost forever, and Asgard would be brought to its knees. That is a risk, I admit, I conceded, but one we can mitigate. We have superior technology, superior training. The dragons alone are a force, and we have many more bonded riders than they. Uncle Bernard next said, his expression was unreadable. Dragons are weapons of immense power, Cregan. But they are also unpredictable. And fire consumes all, friend and foe alike. Are we to unleash that upon our own continent? For a queen who cannot even secure her own capital? She was usurped. I slammed my hand on the table, the map rattling. She needs our aid. She needs Asgard's wisdom. Winterhold has taught us strategies of war, yes, but also diplomacy, logistics, and infrastructure. We can provide more than just soldiers, we can provide the means to win and rebuild. We will provide humanitarian aid if needed, Grandfather Antares stated, his voice calm but absolute. Medical supplies. Refuge for those fleeing the conflict. But our men, our airships, our direct military might will remain within Asgard's borders. That is our position. That is the will of the council. But you just gave me permission to marry Visenya. I pressed, desperately trying a different angle. How can I marry the daughter of a queen whose throne we refuse to defend? What kind of husband would I be? What kind of prince? Grandfather Antares met my gaze, his eyes softening slightly, but his resolve remained steel. Your marriage to Visenya is a personal matter, Cregan, and one we bless. It does not bind Asgard to war. Her mother's crown is for the south to fight over. Our peace, our people's prosperity, comes first. We will not sacrifice Asgard for the ambitions of others. The words of my grandfather, firm and final, echoed in the solar, we will not sacrifice Asgard for the ambitions of others. My jaw clenched. I felt a surge of frustrated rage, impotent against the collective will of my family. I had argued, pleaded, even used my own personal happiness as leverage, and it had been for naught. Without another word, I spun on my heel and stormed out of the solar, the tension in the room thick enough to cut with a Valyrian steel blade. I strode through the familiar corridors of Winterfell, my boots echoing ominously on the stone, my mind a storm of furious thought. I made my way to my private room, a place of quiet solitude I often sought. Inside, I moved to the small cabinet where a bottle of northern whiskey sat. I poured a generous measure into a glass, the amber liquid glinting dully in the low light. Slumping into my chair, I stared at the dancing flames in the hearth, the warmth doing little to thaw the cold knot in my gut. The war, the damned war, and the oath, my oath to Visenya. I had sworn by the old gods and the new, by the heart tree itself, that I would make sure her family was safe and her mother would sit the Iron Throne. And now, my own family had effectively forbidden me from honoring that oath. I took a deep breath, the fumes of the whiskey burning in my nostrils. How could I reconcile my duty to Asgard with my solemn promise to Visenya and my own burgeoning feelings? With a defiant grunt, I lifted the glass and downed the whiskey in a single gulp, the fiery liquid scorching a path down my throat. It was a foolish, impulsive act, but it cleared my head, hardening my resolve. If Asgard would not act, then I would. I pushed myself up from the chair and made my way out, my steps purposeful. The courtyard was cool, the evening air crisp. My eyes scanned the familiar faces, the warriors who were the backbone of Winterfell's might. My gaze landed on Roderick Dustin, often called Roddy the Ruin for his boisterous nature and love of a good fight. He was one of my closest companions within the Wolf Pack, a unit of the most skilled and daring warriors of the North, loyal to the Starks and always hungry for action. I approached him, a grim smile touching my lips. Roddy, I greeted, my voice low. He turned, his eyes lighting up in recognition. Prince Cregan, to what do we owe the honor? I leaned closer, my voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Prepare a few Wolf Pack members for me. Those who are hungry for battle. Those who crave glory. Roddy's smile widened, a glint entering his eyes. Always, my prince. Consider it done. I nodded, already turning to leave, a plan beginning to form in my mind. How many, my prince? Roddy called after me. I paused, turning my head slightly, my gaze sweeping over the moonlit courtyard. 365 comments 0 vote. Stroll. 133 AC. Cregan Stark Pav. The next day, by midday, the inner courtyard of Winterfell was a scene of grim, purposeful activity. 300 men of the wolf pack stood ready, a silent, formidable force. They were clad in their full armor, plates of gleaming northern steel that reflected the pale sunlight, each man bearing a sword, spear, and shield. Their breath plumed in the cold air, their faces hardened with anticipation. They were ready to march. I stood with Roddy, my back to the castle keep, my gaze sweeping over the assembled warriors. Roddy, ever the pragmatic one, was double-checking supplies, his voice a low rumble of commands. "Are they all accounted for, Roddy?" I asked, my voice barely above a murmur, though it carried in the crisp air. Roddy turned, his helmet clanking softly as he nodded. "Every man, my prince. 300 of the finest. Hungry, as you commanded." His eyes, visible through the visor, held a knowing glint. "And curious. They know this isn't a simple patrol." "No," I confirmed, my gaze distant. "It's not. They've heard the whispers, my prince," Roddy continued, leaning closer, his voice dropping slightly. "About the king's passing. About the dragon banners flying in King's Landing." He paused, then, and about Princess Visonya's tears. I clenched my jaw, the memory of her weeping face fresh in my mind. "Let them whisper." "Always, my prince," Roddy affirmed, a hand going to his sword hilt. "But the destination, it's not a secret for long. We'll be riding south. Are we to inform them of our purpose before we depart?" I turned to face him fully, my eyes hard. "They are sworn to House Stark. They will follow where I led. But yes, before we set off, I will address them. They will know what they ride into. They will know why." Roddy nodded slowly, his expression serious. "Understood, my prince. They are ready when you are." He glanced at the men, then back at me. 300, you said. A good number for a swift blade. But for a war, he left the thought unspoken, the sheer scale of the conflict in the south hanging in the air between us. "We are Asgardians," I replied, my gaze drifting to the distant peaks. "One of us is equal to 100 of the Southerners." My words, though quiet, carried the conviction of years spent mastering northern techniques and understanding the true advancements of our realm. As I stood with Roddy, the quiet hum of the prepared wolf pack filling the courtyard, a familiar presence made itself known. My grandfather, King Stark, approached, his stern gaze sweeping over the armed men, followed closely by my father, Rickon Stark. "Cregan," grandfather's voice cut through the air, low and measured, "what is the meaning of this? I told you we were not going to participate in the war." I turned, meeting his gaze directly, a carefully constructed nonchalance masking the defiance churning within me. "No, grandfather," I replied, a slight shrug. "We are not going to war." I gestured vaguely at the assembled men. "I am merely taking a stroll, stretching my legs. These 300 men are, of course, purely for my protection." Father Rickon's eyes narrowed. "Protection? From what, and where, pray tell, are you planning to stroll that requires such a retinue?" I looked at the ranks of the wolf pack, their faces impassive, perfectly playing their part. Then I turned back to my grandfather, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching my lips. "I haven't really thought about it, to be honest. But now that you ask." I paused, feigning contemplation. "I suppose I'll head south. I heard it's a bit warm down there right now, gotta enjoy the warm breeze." The courtyard fell silent, save for the distant clang of a hammer from the forges. Grandfather Antares stared at me for a long time, his expression unreadable, a silent battle of wills playing out between us. Then, slowly, a faint grin spread across his face, a glimmer of understanding in his eyes. He saw the defiance, the determination, and perhaps, a reflection of the Stark blood that ran in his own veins. "Well then," he said, his voice dropping, a hint of something unsaid in its depths. "Enjoy the vacation down there, Cregan. And don't come back until I say so." I met his gaze, a quiet nod acknowledging the unspoken truth. This wasn't a vacation, it was an exile, a calculated move to allow me to act without officially implicating Asgard. He was giving me permission, a way to keep my oath, even if it meant breaking his own decree. He knew. I knew he knew. And I knew that a Stark had to keep his oath, no matter the cost, no matter the distance from home. "I understand, grandfather," I replied, my voice steady. With a final glance at the assembled men, I turned and walked towards the waiting horse. The South awaited, and with it, the dance. After a surprisingly tense midday meal, where the silence spoke volumes, I made my way back to the courtyard. The 300 men of the wolf pack stood in formation, a formidable wall of northern steel and grim faces. They watched me, their anticipation a tangible thing in the cold air. I walked to the front of the formation, my gaze sweeping over each man, acknowledging their loyalty and their silent question. I let the silence stretch for a long moment, allowing the weight of the moment to settle. Then, I spoke, my voice carrying clearly. For those of you who don't know where we are going, I began, a slight, knowing smirk playing on my lips, we are going to the south. To take a stroll. A ripple of chuckles, low and guttural, spread through the ranks. I heard Roddy's booming laugh from near the front. I let my own chuckle join theirs, a shared understanding passing between us. I heard the weather is quite nice down there this time of year, I continued, and I want to enjoy it. Maybe even catch a warm breeze, More chuckles, some of the men nodding in agreement, a few even muttering, aye. In a hushed tone. So, I concluded, my voice dropping slightly, if anyone among you doesn't fancy a bit of warmth or a long ride, you can stay right here. My eyes hardened, moving from face to face. But I warn you, the South is a strange place. There may be bandits, or thieves, or worse, down the road. Don't start complaining during the journey. With the last, echoing in the courtyard, we turned, the 300 Wolfpack warriors moving as one cohesive unit towards the Wintercity train station. The cold northern air bit at my cheeks, but my blood was hot with purpose. Just as we approached the main gates of Winterfell, a flash of silver white caught my eye. Visenya. She came running, her cloak flying behind her, her face streaked with fresh tears. She reached me, breathless, her small hands clutching my arm. Cregan, she cried, her voice trembling. Please, be safe. Take care of your health. Promise me. I caught her in a quick embrace, holding her tightly. I will, my love, I murmured into her hair. I promise you. There's no need to worry. I pulled back, looking into her tear-filled violet eyes. I have the wolf pack with me, the finest warriors in Asgard. We are more than capable. I leaned closer, lowering my voice so only she could hear. And remember, I have my ice dragon, should the need truly arise. I am safe. Her eyes widened slightly at the mention of the dragon, a flicker of relief in their depths. Then, she reached up, pulled my face down, and gave me a deep, lingering kiss, a public display of affection that solidified our bond and sealed our secret pact, even as curious eyes watched. When we finally broke apart, she was still breathing hard, her gaze fixed on mine. Listen closely, I told her, my voice urgent but low. Once you've composed yourself, send a message to your mother. Tell her to wait for a message from me. I will send it to her after visiting King's Landing. Visenya nodded, her brow furrowed in concentration. And, I continued, a grim smile touching my lips, send another message. To King's Landing. To the usurper king. My voice hardened, laced with a cold defiance. Tell him that Theon Stark is coming, with his 300 men, to the capital for sightseeing. And make sure they properly welcome me. Her eyes widened further, understanding dawning. It was a thinly veiled threat, a declaration of intent cloaked in northern arrogance. She nodded again, a fierce light in her gaze. I will, Cregan. Be careful. I gave her one last, reassuring squeeze, then turned to mount my horse. The whistle of the train sounded, a harsh cry signaling our departure. Visenya stood watching as I joined my men. With a final glance back, a silent promise exchanged across the distance, I urged my horse forward, leading my wolf pack onto the tracks. The journey south, and the true beginning of the dance, had begun. As the train began to pull away from the Wintercity station, carrying me and my 300 men south, my mind was already racing, plotting the next moves on this deadly chessboard. The messages I'd tasked Visenya with sending were a carefully calculated gamble, a gauntlet thrown. Aegon and his lickspittle hand, Otto Hightower, would undoubtedly be receiving the chilling news. I could practically see Otto's shrewd mind working, frantically devising plans to contain me. He knew the true threat of the North, the might of Asgard, and he certainly knew of the ice dragons. My presence, and the thinly veiled threat of my numbers, wouldn't be dismissed lightly. I would be their main focus now, a diversion, a looming question mark on their battle plans. But even more crucial was the message to Rhaenyra. The news that a Stark was marching, that I was marching, would be a beacon of hope for her. She would have the assurance that an ice dragon was indeed aiding them, a powerful, unspoken promise that the North, through me, was on her side. It might just be the morale boost she needed, a sign that not all was lost, and that her claim still had formidable, if unconventional, allies. The dance was upon us, and I intended to make my first steps loud and clear. We boarded the train, the familiar clang of the doors sealing us inside. The warmth of the car was a stark contrast to the biting cold outside, but my blood still thrummed with a different kind of chill, the thrill of the impending conflict. As the train began to pull away from the station, slowly at first, then gathering speed, I looked out the window at the receding landscape of Winterfell. Then, with a silent thought that stretched across the bond we shared, I called for her. My ice dragon, Saphira, previously ridden by the great wolf, Theon Stark, would soon join us. She would be our watchful shadow, a silent, powerful guardian, making the South aware of the North's true, terrifying might. The game had begun. 44 comments 0 vote. Going south. 133 AC. Third person POV. By the next day night, the train carrying Cregan and his 300 Wolfpack men reached Moat Cailin. Here, they secured a fresh complement of horses after making a swift, efficient deal with House Skull, with his Aunt Mordred's husband, who maintained an outpost there. Aunt Mordred, best friend of Rhaenyra Targaryen, helped him secure the deal and gave him provisions for his travel. The northern steeds, accustomed to long marches and harsh terrain, were a vital upgrade from the train for overland travel. The following morning, after breaking fast, the company resumed its relentless journey south. They moved with purpose, a disciplined force cutting through the familiar Neck pathways. As they approached the various lordships along their path in the south of Neck, many houses simply gave way, recognizing the formidable presence of Cregan's host. The whispers of an ice dragon, said to be even larger than the legendary Vhagar, now accompanying the prince, certainly helped to clear their path. Saphira's reputation made direct confrontation unthinkable for these smaller houses. Cregan, with his knowledge of the future, made his way towards Rook's Rest. In the original timeline, this was destined to be the first major battle of the Dance of the Dragons, a brutal aerial confrontation that would claim Princess Rhaenys and her dragon Meleys, and leave King Aegon II grievously wounded with a burnt face. He pushed his men harder, the urgency of his purpose driving them onward. They marched for 10 grueling days, covering ground at a remarkable pace. On the 11th day, they finally made camp near Maidenpool, the air growing noticeably warmer and the landscape greener. After ensuring his men were settled and concealed, Cregan dispatched his wargs from the wolf pack to get information about what was happening around Rook's Rest. It wasn't long before a warg returned, his eyes still distant, his mind processing the images he'd gleaned. "My prince," the warg reported, his voice low, "an army, holding green banners with the gold three-headed dragon, is marching towards Rook's Rest. They intend to sack it and bring it under the Green's banner." "How much time until they reach Rook's Rest?" Cregan asked, his jaw tightening. "They will be there by tomorrow midday, my prince," the warg confirmed. The next morning, Cregan's force undertook a hard march towards Rook's Rest, pushing their mounts and themselves to their limits. They arrived just as the battle was unfolding, a chaotic spectacle of fire and steel. Below, Criston Cole was already rallying the Green Army, directing them to advance on Rook's Rest. Above, the sky was a canvas of deadly aerial combat. Princess Rhaenys Targaryen, astride her formidable red dragon Meleys, was locked in a desperate struggle against two much larger beasts. Aegon, mounted on the golden Sunfire, and Aemond, astride the colossal Vhagar. The roar of dragons, the clash of scales, and the searing heat of dragonflame filled the air. Cregan had arrived just in time. Rhaenys Targaryen POV. Rhaenys Targaryen POV. As I flew atop Meleys, the wind whipping past my face, my thoughts were a swirling tempest. The Green Army below, a force sent to besiege our allies, the staunch supporters of the rightful queen. My blood boiled. Aemond and his monstrous Vhagar had given my sweet Luke grave injuries, leaving him feverish and unconscious. This wasn't just strategy, it was vengeance. I wanted to vent my frustrations, to unleash the fury burning within me. It had taken every ounce of my willpower to even secure the Queen's permission to come to our allies' aid. The guttural roar of Meleys broke me from my musings, pulling my gaze downwards. The Green Army had dug trenches, erected siege towers, and surrounded Rook's Rest, raining arrows upon the keep. With a furious command, Dracarys, I urged Meleys to dive. We swept over their lines, raining fire, scattering their formations like frightened sheep. Panic erupted below, their disciplined ranks crumbling. Then, a blaring horn cut through the din. I looked up. There, soaring through the sky, was Aegon on Sunfire, flying directly towards me. My jaw tightened. Aengos, Meleys, attack, Meleys, I roared, and my mighty dragon responded, a streak of crimson against the pale sky. We met in a clash of scales and flame, a brutal aerial ballet. Meleys, larger and swifter than Sunfire, quickly gained the upper hand. We tangled, a whirlwind of dragonfire and snapping jaws, Meleys' superior agility giving her an advantage. Then, a shadow fell over us. I glanced to my right. Aemond, mounted on the colossal Vhagar, was flying towards us, a grim determination etched on his face. As Meleys and Sunfire remained locked in a desperate embrace, Aemond roared a command, and Vhagar opened her immense maw, a torrent of dragonfire ready to engulf us. Sovs, Meleys, fly, Meleys, I commanded, and my dragon, with a surprising burst of speed, disengaged from Sunfire. We twisted away, just in time. Sunfire's wing caught the edge of Vogger's flame, a brief, terrifying blaze that quickly diminished, leaving him momentarily off balance but still stable in the sky. My rage surged anew. Angos, Vhagar, attack, Vhagar. I urged Meleys. Vhagar might be immense, but the old bronze dragon lacked the swiftness of her younger kin. My plan was simple. Take the rider first. Meleys darted around the sluggish Vhagar, delivering a few stinging scratches to her thick hide. They barely registered, but the fight was growing increasingly difficult. Aegon, having steadied Sunfire, urged him back into the fray, flanking me. Now, I was at a distinct disadvantage, caught between two formidable beasts. As I fought Vhagar, I saw Sunfire rapidly approaching from my side, a flash of gold and fire. A cold certainty settled in my heart. Today would be the day I died. I closed my eyes, bracing for the inevitable, for the darkness to take over. But then, a roar, unlike any I had ever heard, tore through the air. I opened my eyes, and my breath caught. From the heavens above, a massive, pure white dragon with piercing blue eyes, larger even than Vhagar, descended like a bolt from the sky. It moved with impossible speed, diving straight for Sunfire. Before Aegon could even react, the white dragon had caught Sunfire's throat in its immense jaws, and with a terrifying, bone-crushing force, plunged him to the ground. The impact shook the very earth, a sickening thud that silenced the battlefield for a terrifying moment. My eyes widened, fixed on the impossible sight. A dragon, larger than Vhagar, and pure white. What in the seven hells was this? Sunfire let out a horrifying screech as the immense white dragon's jaws clamped down on its throat. The sound was cut short, choked off by the brutal force. After a few agonizing seconds, the golden dragon went limp. Sunfire was dead. Then, the ice dragon let loose a guttural roar, a deep, resonant sound that vibrated through the very air and shook the ground beneath Meleys' talons. It was a sound of raw power, a primal declaration. It then took flight, a ghostly white behemoth against the blue sky, and made its way towards us. My heart leapt. I thought it was coming for me, that my battle was about to turn from dire to utterly hopeless. But when I looked carefully, its trajectory was clear, it was making straight for Vhagar. Aemond, sensing the immediate and terrifying threat, roared a command, urging the old dragon to pull back and retreat. Vhagar, surprisingly nimble for her age when spurred by a desperate rider, banked sharply and fled, disappearing into the distant clouds. The white dragon, seeing Vhagar retreat, gave up the chase. Instead, it wheeled in the air, its majestic form outlined against the fading light, and began to rain dark blue flame down upon the usurper's army below. This was no ordinary fire. Everything the flame touched instantly turned to ice, freezing men in their tracks, encasing siege towers in brittle blue glass, and shattering weaponry into shards. Just then, I heard the thunderous roars of men from the far end of the field. My gaze snapped to the ground, and I saw them. A disciplined charge of men wearing black armor, riding hard, tearing through the scattered green army like a storm. Every man in their path was cut down, their formations annihilated. Then it clicked. Ice dragons. Visenya's message to King's Landing, that Cregan Stark was coming for sightseeing. I hadn't truly believed it. Not like this, not so fast, not with such overwhelming force. My blood ran cold, then hot with a thrill I hadn't felt in years. The wolf pack. Cregan had come. My own fighting spirit surged, renewed and invigorated by this unexpected, miraculous arrival. Dracarys, Meleys. I roared, my voice hoarse with exhilaration. Rain fire. On the green army. Show them the fury of the Red Queen. Meleys responded with a roar of her own, diving towards the battlefield, her own flames adding to the chaos, now an ally in a battle that had suddenly, miraculously, turned in our favor. 31 comments 0 vote. Rook's Rest. 133 AC. Cregan Stark Pav. As we neared Rook's Rest, the battle was already a roaring, fiery chaos. I could see the three dragons fighting in the sky, flashes of gold, red, and bronze against the smoke-filled air. On the ground, fire and smoke billowed, and I could tell the Green Army had broken formation. Rhaenys must have struck them hard before Aegon and Aemond joined the fray to finish Meleys. My eyes quickly found Criston Cole, a white-cloaked figure frantically trying to rally his men, shouting about the king joining the battle. He was a fool. Saphira, I mentally commanded, reaching out through our bond. Help the red dragon. Focus on the fight in the sky. Her assent, a cool, powerful presence in my mind, was immediate. Then I turned to my men, my gaze sweeping over their hardened faces. Asgardians, I bellowed, my voice cutting through the din, prepare to fight. The time has come to show these soft southern fuckers what the might of the wolf pack can do. Leave no one alive, even if it is a knight, lord, or prince. We fight for glory. For glory. They roared back, a unified, thunderous shout that shook the very ground. And then we charged. We didn't care what was in our way. Our horses thundered across the field, a black wave of fury. We decimated everything in our path, a living battering ram tearing through the shattered green lines. Every wolf pack member was trained to the extreme limits of human capability, utilizing demon slayer breathing techniques to enhance their strength, speed, and endurance. Fully armored, they moved like a dark tide, giving the enemy no quarter. They were a force of nature, a blizzard of steel and ice, cutting down all who stood before them. As we carved a path of destruction, my eyes flickered to the sky. I saw Saphira, a blur of white, clamp down on Sunfire's throat. The golden dragon thrashed for a few horrifying seconds, then went limp, plunging to the ground. Sunfire was down. My ice dragon then made its way towards Vagar, but the bronze she-dragon, sensing the shift in battle, wisely retreated. Good decision. With their king's dragon dead and Aegon likely crippled beneath the wreckage, the Green Army's morale slumped like a pricked balloon. Panic set in, and the army began to scatter, a tide of green and gold breaking and fleeing. Rhaenys and Meleys, seeing Vagar gone, roared their triumph and began to rain fire down on the fleeing Greens, turning their retreat into a rout. From the keep of Rook's Rest, the Black Allies, seeing Meleys join the war with such overwhelming new allies, cheered and threw open their gates, pouring out to join the fight against the shattered Green forces. My wolf pack and I finally reached Criston Cole and the remnants of the Green Army he was trying desperately to hold together. He was a capable fighter, but a fool. Our eyes locked. You. Criston roared, his face contorted in rage, drawing his sword. You're the northern barbarian they spoke of. Come to meddle in our affairs, have you? I met his glare, my own voice calm, almost bored. Just stretching my legs, Kingsguard. Heard the south had some scenic views. He snarled, tightening his grip on his sword. I'm sick of your jests, Stark. This is war, and you're about to face the king's justice. Justice. I scoffed, a cold smile touching my lips. The only justice here is a defeated king on the ground and turned to dust. My justice is coming for you, Esser. We urged our horses forward, a clash of wills preceding the clash of steel. In the first tilt, before he could even properly engage, I rode him down, my heavier northern charger knocking Criston Cole clean off his horse. He landed with a grunt, his armor clanking. I dismounted, making my way towards him as he struggled to his feet, trying to regain his composure. You'll pay for this, Stark. He spat, wiping blood from his lip. For Sunfire. For his grace. He should have stayed home, then, I replied, my eyes cold. Now get up, Kingsguard. Don't waste my time. He roared, charging at me, his sword a blur. I met his attack with ease, my movements fluid, effortless. I didn't press the attack, merely defended, deflecting his blows, letting him wear himself out. He was strong, but predictable, his rage blinding him. It was a dance of steel, but one where only one of us knew the steps. After what felt like an eternity of playing, and with a sudden surge of speed, I moved. My blade snapped forward, disarming him with a sharp clang. Before he could react, the pommel of my sword smashed against his temple. He went limp, collapsing to the ground, unconscious. Then I looked around the battlefield. The remaining Greens were throwing down their arms, surrender cries echoing across the blood-soaked field. Near me, Roderick Dustin stood over the prone form of Gwaine Hightower, Roddy's sword still gleaming. Gwaine, Alicent's brother, was clearly dead, his head at an unnatural angle. A fitting end for one of the usurper's sycophants. The Battle of Rook's Rest, which should have been a devastating blow for the Blacks, was now a decisive victory. And it was only the beginning. As the final remnants of the Green Army scattered and were eliminated by my men and the arriving forces from Rook's Rest, the roar of a familiar dragon filled the sky. Rhaenys, astride Meleys, began her descent towards our position. Just as they neared, Saphira, my majestic ice dragon, also glided down, her white form a stark contrast to Meleys' crimson. She settled near our group, her blue eyes scanning the battlefield with a calm, predatory grace. Lord Staunton of Rook's Rest, a portly man with wide, grateful eyes, hurried towards us as well, his gait relieved but still a little shaken. Meleys landed with a powerful thud, and Rhaenys dismounted, her silver hair loose, her battle-scarred face alight with a fierce satisfaction. Lord Staunton immediately bowed deeply. Princess Rhaenys, we are saved, thanks to you. Lord Staunton, she acknowledged with a nod, her gaze then finding mine. Prince Cregan, she gave a curt nod of respect. Princess Rhaenys, I replied, mirroring her formality with a slight incline of my head. She offered a wry smile. I see the weather in the south is agreeing with you, Prince Cregan. I grinned, the exhaustion of the battle finally starting to settle in. We were just starting to enjoy it, princess. But the fun seems to be over already. Rhaenys chuckled, a genuine, hearty sound. Then you should march a little further south, prince. I have a feeling there will be plenty more fun to be had. We shared a moment of shared laughter, the grim camaraderie of battle forging an instant bond. Then, our conversation turned to Dragonstone, Rhaenyra's court, and the unfolding disaster that had brought us all to this bloody field. As we spoke, Roddy the Ruin approached, his armor scuffed but his eyes bright with victory. Roddy, I said, clapping him on the shoulder, allow me to introduce you to Princess Rhaenys Targaryen. This is Roderick Dustin, or as we call him, Roddy the Ruin, leader of the Wolf Pack. Rhaenys offered him a respectful nod. Lord Roderick, your men fight like demons. A fearsome sight. My pleasure, princess, Roddy replied, his chest swelling with pride. Then his expression turned grim. My prince, Aegon is dead. Found him amongst the wreckage of his dragon. Then woe to the usurper, I stated, a cold satisfaction settling in my gut. Rhaenys nodded gravely, her earlier mirth gone. Indeed, a fitting end for one who stole what was not his. I then pointed towards the unconscious Criston Cole, who lay slumped, guarded by 2 Wolfpack members. Criston Cole is unconscious. Strip him of his armor and tie him up. Rhaenys raised an eyebrow. Aren't you going to execute him, Prince Cregan? He is a Kingsguard who betrayed his oaths. Oh, we will, princess, I said, my voice hardening. But he would wish it were a clean death. He should be made an example for those who break their vows after joining the Kingsguard in the future. A lesson, stark and clear. Rhaenys' expression became thoughtful, then she nodded slowly. A very northern idea of justice, prince. What is your next plan? March to King's Landing, I stated plainly. Lord Staunton, who had been listening in hushed awe, gasped. To King's Landing, with 300 men. This is madness, Prince Cregan. And an ice dragon, I corrected him, glancing at Saphira, who had laid down near us, her vast white form a silent, undeniable argument. But still madness, Lord Staunton insisted, wringing his hands. I met his gaze, a glint in my eye. Lord Staunton, there is a fine line between madness and greatness. If Aegon the Conqueror had failed to combine Westeros after sending each king a raven telling them to surrender to him and his dragons, that would have been madness. He won, so now he is called Aegon the Conqueror. Success defines the legend, Lord Stoughton. I then turned to Rhaenys. Prince Rhaenys, will you come with us? She sighed, a hint of regret in her eyes. I wish I could, Prince. But the Queen ordered me to return to Dragonstone quickly after relieving Rook's rest. After seeing Lucerys injured, she isn't up for taking risks. Understood, I said, a slight nod. Well, we will continue our march tomorrow morning. You are free to join us if your duties permit. She paused, then asked, her tone softening with genuine concern, how is Visenya doing? The news of the king's passing, and Lucerys's injury. She's fine, I replied, a small, private smile touching my lips. Just a little overwhelmed by the news. But she's strong, stronger than most realize. I then shared a few more details about her well-being, assuring Rhaenys that Visenya was safe and coping. She wished me luck in my future battles and, with a final, lingering look of gratitude and resolve, remounted Melis. With a powerful beat of her wings, the Queen Who Never Was ascended into the sky and flew off towards Dragonstone. Lord Staunton, now visibly more composed, cleared his throat. Prince Cregan, your victory has saved Rook's rest. Please, allow us to offer you and your brave men rest within my castle for the night. Thank you, Lord Staunton, I accepted with a nod. That would be most welcome. We made our way into Rook's Rest, the castle gates now open wide to welcome us, the taste of victory sweet on our tongues, and the road to King's Landing beckoning with its promise of fire, ice, and glory. 9 comments 0 vote. King's Landing. 133 AC. Cregan Stark Pav. We rested for the night at Rook's Rest, the victory a bittersweet taste. The next morning, fueled by Lord Staunton's generous supplies, we broke camp and began our relentless march towards King's Landing. 5 days later, the sprawling, squalid silhouette of the capital loomed in the distance. As soon as we were within range, an abominable stench assaulted my nostrils, the unmistakable reek of piss and shit. It was a smell I knew well from my past life, and it hit me with a visceral disgust. Roddy, riding to my right, gagged, his face twisting. Where the fuck is that smell from? He muttered, disbelief plain in his voice. Look in front of you, I replied, my gaze fixed on the distant city walls. Roddy followed my gaze, then shook his head. So they're fighting for this shithole. I affirmed, the single word dripping with contempt. Suddenly, the bells of King's Landing began to ring, a cacophony of alarm. On top of the city walls, the remaining Green Army, a motley collection of gold cloaks and hastily assembled levies, appeared. Bows were nocked with arrows, ready to loose if we came within range. Lannisters and Baratheons hadn't finished mobilizing their forces yet, this was all they had. Then, a familiar, terrifying roar ripped through the sky. I looked up. Vhagar, the bronze she-dragon, was a speck growing rapidly larger, making her way towards us. Saphira, I commanded, my voice echoing through the bond. Take care of the bronze she-dragon. I turned to my men. First 50 members of the wolf pack, dismount your horses. I barked. The rest of you, be ready to charge when I give the signal. Roddy looked at me, a question in his eyes. What signal, my prince? A grim smile touched my lips. You'll know it when you see it. The 50 dismounted men formed a tight shield wall, their northern steel gleaming menacingly. March, I commanded. We began our advance, a deliberate, inexorable crawl towards the Dragon Gate. When we were within range, a volley of arrows hissed from the walls. But our shields, forged of thick northern steel, held firm. The arrows either shattered or bounced harmlessly off the polished surfaces, unable to penetrate. For 15 agonizing minutes, we marched, arrows raining down, until we were finally at the base of the Dragon Gate. Move to one of the doors, center. I ordered. Then, with a raw surge of power, I transformed. My skin stretched, my muscles bulged, and jagged claws erupted from my fingertips as I became half-lichen. The animalistic strength flooded my limbs. I reared back and launched a kick at the thick wooden door. The gate vibrated, shaking on its ancient hinges. I hit it again, and again, 10 more times, the dull thuds reverberating through the stone. I heard the hinges creak, groaning under the immense force. With one final, thunderous kick, the massive gate crashed inward, splitting and falling to the ground with a deafening roar. Roddy, seeing the impossible happen, grinned fiercely. That's the signal, boys. He bellowed. For glory. With a unified roar, the entire wolf pack charged. The Dragon Gate lay shattered, and my wolf pack surged into King's Landing. I looked up, scanning the smoke-filled sky. Saphira was still entangled with Vhagar, a massive, swirling battle of ice and bronze. Vhagar was tenacious, even old, and it seemed Vhagar still had some fight left in her to deal with the ancient beast. 50 to the walls, I roared, pointing to the gaping maw of the Dragon Gate. My first 50 men, those who had formed the shield wall, moved with brutal efficiency. The green archers on the battlements had stopped firing, likely fearing they'd accidentally hit their own men as the wolf pack swarmed through the gate. This was their mistake. We scrambled up the inner stairs, a relentless tide of northern steel. Once on the wall, it was a slaughter. The startled archers and few guards were no match for the demon slayer-trained wolf pack. We moved like phantoms, our blades silent, decisive. In minutes, the entire stretch of wall above the Dragon Gate was clear, every green defender eliminated. I looked back up to the sky. The aerial ballet had shifted. Saphira, a pure white blur, was now disengaging from Vhagar, leaving the bronze dragon tumbling. Then, with a chilling finality, Vhagar crashed, an earth-shattering impact heard even over the din of the city. Saphira had killed Vhagar. Aemond, the one-eyed prince, was likely dead amidst the wreckage. With the sky secured and the city now ours for the taking, I pointed towards the towering silhouette of the Red Keep. To the Red Keep, I commanded. We cut a path through the city's labyrinthine streets, the remaining green soldiers melting away before our charge. The streets, once choked with the stench of the city, were now filled with the metallic tang of blood and the terrified screams of the few who tried to resist. When we reached the Red Keep, its gates were already shut, massive and imposing. No matter. I transformed once more into half-lichen, my muscles coiling, my form swelling with raw power. With a guttural roar, I began to kick the massive wooden doors. The first impact echoed like thunder. 5 brutal kicks, each one a hammer blow, and the ancient timber groaned. With a final, explosive kick, the gates crashed inward, splintering into 1,000 pieces. We surged into the Red Keep, a wave of black armor and snarling wolves. The remaining Kingsguard and household guards met us, but they were few, and their morale was shattered. The fight was short, bloody, and decisive. After a half-hour of relentless fighting, the Red Keep was ours. We rounded up all the remaining green leaders. Otto Hightower, his face a mask of pale fury, was quickly seized. Tywin Lannister and Jasper Wilde were taken, their protests swiftly silenced. Larry Strong, true to his nature, was found attempting to hide in one of the Red Keep's secret tunnels, but the wolf pack's senses were too keen. Even Grand Maester Orwyle was dragged from his chambers. As for the usurper's family, I had a specific order. Alicent Hightower and Helaena Targaryen, along with Helaena's innocent children, were swiftly located and imprisoned in a maiden bow. They would live, for now, but their freedom, and their power, were at an end. The red keep had fallen. Roddy, I commanded, my voice firm despite the lingering exhaustion from my transformation. Send them all to the dungeons. And search every one of their chambers for any information we can get about their planning. Also, release those who are loyal to Rhaenyra from the dungeons and tell them to help keep order in the city. Roddy nodded, already barking orders to his men. The captured Greens, their faces a mix of terror and disbelief, were swiftly escorted away. I found a relatively untouched chamber nearby and slumped into a chair, the rapid transformations into half-lichen form having drained a significant amount of my stamina. I leaned back, closing my eyes for a moment, letting my breathing even out. My rest was short-lived. After some time, a knock came at the door. Enter, I called out. Roddy stepped in, a sheaf of letters and scrolls in his hand. My prince, he said, handing them over. I quickly scanned the information. It confirmed my suspicions. Alliances being forged, troop movements, political machinations. It was a clear picture of their usurping plans. I nodded, satisfied. Good. Now, bring all the small council members to the throne room. And send a message immediately, using one of our wargs, to Dragonstone. Tell Queen Rhaenyra that King's Landing is no longer under the control of the Greens and that she should come to King's Landing. I paused, then added, also, send a message to Lord Staunton of Rook's Rest. Inform him of our victory and tell him to bring Kristen Cole here. Roddy nodded once more, his eyes gleaming with understanding, and left to carry out the orders. I made my way to the throne room. A few moments later, a wolf pack member informed me that the prisoners were assembled. As I entered, the sight was a grim tableau. Otto Hightower, Tywin Lannister, Larry Strong, Grand Maester Orwyle, and Jasper Wilde stood amidst a scattering of other lords and knights who had been imprisoned in the dungeons for their loyalty to Rhaenyra. Alicent Hightower and Helaena Targaryen were also present, their faces pale but defiant, standing with the children. Aemond was notably absent. He was dead, crushed beneath the weight of his own dragon, Vhagar. I also saw a detachment of gold cloaks who had remained loyal to Daemon and had joined our side in the final push against the Greens. Roddy, ever the man of action, walked to the foot of the Iron Throne. Will you be sitting on the throne, my prince? He asked. I looked at him incredulously, then at the monstrous, uncomfortable edifice. Who the hell would sit on such a monstrosity? I scoffed. Place a chair at the steps of the throne. A wolf pack member quickly brought a simple, sturdy chair. I moved to it, removed my sword from my waist, and settled in, crossing one leg over the other. I let my right hand rest on the hilt of my sheathed blade, tapping it gently on the stone floor. My gaze swept over the gathered figures, from the defiant Greens to the relieved blacks. Shall we begin? I stated, the words hanging in the air, signaling the true commencement of our reign in King's Landing. 13 comments 0 vote. Hour of the Wolf. 133 AC. Cregan Stark Pav. I sat on the simple chair at the foot of the Iron Throne, my sword resting at my side, my eyes sweeping over every face in the throne room. There was a palpable tension in the air, a mix of fear and anticipation. Bring forth the traitors, I commanded, my voice cutting through the silence. The wolf pack members pushed the imprisoned small council members forward. The first was Jasper Wilde. His face was pale but defiant. Jasper Wilde, I began, my gaze piercing. You stand accused of treason for helping Aegon Targaryen usurp the rightful Queen Rhaenyra. How do you plead? He met my gaze unflinchingly. I follow the ancient traditions. A king's son should succeed him, and that is what I did. If that is treason in your eyes, then so be it. So be it, I echoed, my voice flat. I gestured to 2 wolf pack members. Fetch a stump. Place Jasper Wilde's neck upon it. The men moved with swift efficiency. As they secured him, I slowly unsheathed my sword, the northern steel hissing softly as it left its scabbard. In the name of Cregan of House Stark, I sentence you to die. With a swift, clean swing, my sword arced downwards. A sickening thud, and Jasper Wilde's head rolled across the black marble floor. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Next prisoner, I ordered, my voice showing no emotion. Larry Strong was pushed forward, his clubfoot dragging. He eyed me with a mixture of fear and that usual calculating glint. Larry Strong, I stated. You stand accused of treason for your perfidious machinations against the rightful queen. I accept I did, he rasped, his eyes darting towards his fallen comrade's head. Though I served what I believed was the future. His voice dropped, a strange request emerging. But when I am dead, my prince, I have one last plea. Hack off my clubfoot with that great sword of yours. I have dragged it with me for all of my life. It was a peculiar request, but I simply nodded. My sword arced down once more. Bring the next prisoner, I commanded, ignoring the last wish. Tywin Lannister was brought forward, his expensive silks now stained and rumpled. His golden lion's pride remained, however. Tywin Lannister, I said, leaning forward slightly. 3/4 of the royal treasury has gone missing. Do you have anything to say about it? He sneered, his gaze filled with contempt. I have nothing to say to you, northern heathen. I studied him for a long moment, a slow smile spreading on my face. Ah, still some fire in him, good. Roddy. I waved a hand. Take him to the dungeons. This one still has some fire in him. We should make sure that fire is doused before his execution. 2 Wolfpack members seized the protesting Lannister and dragged him away. Then, Grand Maester Orwyle was brought forward, his face pale and trembling. He was old, and his fear was palpable. Grand Maester Orwyle, I said, my voice cold. You served the usurpers. You aided in their lies and their schemes. You are guilty of treason. Orwyle stammered, his voice weak. My prince, I was only doing my duty. I am a maester. I serve the realm. You served a false king, I retorted, my voice flat. And for that, you will pay the price. My sword rose and fell once more. Another head rolled. Finally, the last prisoner was brought forth. Otto Hightower. He stood tall, his eyes burning with defiance, his silver hair a stark contrast to his pale face. Last, but certainly not least, I drawled, my voice laced with sarcasm. Sir Otto Hightower, grand architect of this usurpation. How does it feel to have the plans you meticulously made through the decades fall apart in a single moon? Otto's eyes flashed, and he began to rant, a torrent of words about Rhaenyra's unfitness, the ancient traditions, and the sacred right of kings. You barbarian. You've destroyed everything. You'll never hold this city. The realm will rise against you. I let him finish, my expression turning serious, cold as the northern winds. Sir Otto Hightower, I cut him off, my voice sharp and final. You stand accused of treason. How do you plead? Not guilty. He spat. I have followed the traditions set since ancient times by my ancestors, and I stand by it. I merely nodded. Place him on the stump. The wolf pack members moved to obey, their movements quick and brutal. You've doomed us all, Otto roared, even as they forced his neck onto the block. My sword swung, a flash of steel. The sound of the blade was swift, mercifully brief. As Otto's head rolled, his defiant eyes still wide in death, a choked sob erupted from the side of the room. Alicent Hightower, who had been watching in silent horror, now crumbled, her face buried in her hands, Helaena Targaryen beside her, equally distraught. Wolfpack, I commanded, pointing. Escort Queen Alicent and Princess Helaena back to the Maidenbow. Ensure they are secured. Then, I addressed the entire throne room. Disperse. Everyone to their duties. The maesters, begin sending ravens. The gold cloaks, return to your posts and restore order. The loyal lords, meet with Roddy to begin the tally of resources. As they began to move, the room emptying, I rose from my chair, the strange monstrosity of the Iron Throne looming behind me. I began to roam through the Red Keep, my wolf pack members already moving through the castle, ensuring our control. As I walked, I spotted the lingering symbols of the usurper. Maids, I called out, my voice echoing. Remove all the 7-pointed star banners hanging around the Red Keep. They defile these walls. They obeyed immediately, scurrying to do my bidding. The Red Keep was now under Northern command. The dance had truly turned. After ensuring the initial chaos in the Red Keep was being managed, I made my way towards the dungeons. The stench of stale air and misery clung to the stone walls, a familiar scent in such places. I found the cell where Tywin Lannister was being convinced to speak. He was strapped to a rough wooden bench, his face pale and glistening with sweat, but still stubbornly silent. I looked at the wolf pack member in charge of the interrogation. Has he given us anything? I asked, my voice low. The guard shook his head. No, my prince. He's a stubborn one. Claims he knows nothing. I dismissed the guard with a nod and moved closer to Tyland. I pulled up a stool and sat directly in front of him, meeting his defiant gaze. Where is the rest of the treasury, Tyland? I asked, my voice calm, almost conversational. He glared at me, his eyes burning with hatred. I don't know, you northern heathen. I leaned back, a cold, predatory smile spreading across my face. Oh, you will say. One way or another. My voice dropped, becoming a chilling whisper. If you say it now, it ends quickly for you. A swift death, perhaps even a merciful one. If not, I paused, letting my words hang in the air, allowing the true horror of my threat to sink in. Your Lannister line will fall because of your stubbornness. I will kill every last one of your line who is of age. The women will be sent to the Silent Sisters, to bury the dead and live a life of eternal silence. And the boys, the young boys, will be sent to the wall, to freeze and forget their names. Tyland's defiant mask began to crack. His eyes widened, a flicker of genuine terror passing through them. The Lannister pride, the thought of his esteemed house utterly destroyed, was a far greater torment than any physical pain. And Castle Rock, I continued, pressing my advantage, will be turned to an ice mountain. A monument to your folly. All of it, unless you give me the information. A look of utter horror contorted his face. He swallowed hard, his throat working. The fire in his eyes died, replaced by a desperate, beaten despair. Finally, he spoke, his voice hoarse, trembling. 1/3 is in the Iron Bank, he choked out. Another third, at Castle Rock itself. And the last third, in Oldtown, hidden away in a secure vault. I leaned forward, my smile widening. See, that wasn't so hard. All you had to do was paint a picture of what would happen if you didn't agree, and the information starts to roll. I stood up, nodding to the guards. Secure him. We'll verify this information. And then, he can join his friends in the hell. I waited. 2 days passed in King's Landing, a whirlwind of securing the city, consolidating our position, and sending out ravens to every corner of the realm, proclaiming the victory at Rook's Rest and the fall of the usurper. The captured Green loyalists were interrogated, their information carefully documented. Tyland Lannister, having yielded his secrets, was still in the dungeons, awaiting his final fate. The city slowly, cautiously, began to breathe again under the stern but orderly hand of the wolf pack. Then, on the second day, a sight that made the gold cloaks cheer and the newly freed black loyalists weep with joy, Queen Rhaenyra arrived. She descended from the sky, not alone, but with her full might. 3 dragons soared above the city, a testament to her power and the legitimacy of her claim. I recognized Syrax, her golden dragon, leading the charge. Beside her flew Melis, the Red Queen, carrying Princess Rhaenys, a survivor of the day thanks to Saphira's intervention. And finally, the green scales of Vermax, Prince Jacaerys's dragon, a vibrant sign of her sons. Her army, a formidable host of Velaryon, Celtigar, and other loyalist banners, marched through the newly repaired Dragon Gate, their faces filled with relief and triumph. The capital, stained with the blood of usurpers, was now finally hers. The true queen had come home. 28 comments 0 vote. Small council meeting. 133 AC. Cregan Stark Pav. I stood in the throne room, a silent sentinel near the steps of the Iron Throne, the monstrosity I refused to sit upon. The air crackled with anticipation. The news of the Queen's arrival had swept through the Red Keep, bringing with it a sense of finality to the usurper's brief reign. Then, the booming voice of a herald cut through the murmurs, announcing her entrance with all the pomp and ceremony due a true monarch. Her Grace, Rhaenyra of House Targaryen, first of her name, Queen of the Andals and the Rhoynar, and Protector of the 6 Kingdoms. A moment later, the herald continued, introducing her direct kin, Prince Jacaerys of House Targaryen, heir to the Iron Throne. A handsome young man, looking every inch the prince, entered beside his mother. Then, Princess Rhaenys of House Targaryen, Lady of Driftmark. She entered, her eyes finding mine, a brief, knowing smile passing between us. Finally, Lord Curlees of House Velaryon, Lord of Driftmark. The sea snake, looking surprisingly robust despite his age, followed his wife. Rhaenyra herself entered last, her face a mask of regal composure, though I could sense the raw emotion beneath. Her eyes, filled with weariness and resolve, met mine. She walked with purpose, her gaze fixed on the Iron Throne. Your Grace, I said, bowing deeply, a formal greeting for the Queen. Prince Cregan, she replied, her voice filled with quiet gratitude. She inclined her head, her gaze sweeping over the restored black loyalists, the still-bound green traitors, and my vigilant wolf pack. I stepped aside, making way for her to ascend the steps. She approached the Iron Throne, a wary respect in her movements, and slowly, deliberately, sat upon its jagged, uncomfortable blades. It was her seat, rightfully so. Once seated, she looked at me, a genuine smile gracing her lips. Thank you, Prince Cregan. For everything. She then addressed the assembled court, her voice clear and strong despite the recent turmoil, proclaiming her return, the justice that had been served, and the rightful restoration of her reign. She spoke of her grief for her father, of the betrayal she had endured, and of her resolve to heal the realm. After her address, the court began to disperse, and we all made our way to the more intimate confines of the small council chambers, where the true work of reclaiming a kingdom would begin. The Iron Throne was hers, but the fight for the realm was far from over. The small council chamber felt significantly different than the throne room. Here, the air was tighter, more intimate, charged with the heavy weight of strategy and decisions. Queen Rhaenyra took her place at the head of the table, flanked by her closest kin and advisors, Princess Rhaenys, Prince Jacaerys, and Lord Curlees Velaryon. To my right sat Lord Simon Staunton of Rook's Rest, still somewhat wide-eyed from the day's events, and Roderick Dustin, always at my side. Rhaenyra's gaze swept over us, finally settling on me. Prince Cregan, she began, her voice calm, what happened to the Green Small Council members? We found them in the dungeons, but some were missing from the count. I met her gaze evenly. Your Grace, Jasper Wilde, Larry Strong, and Grand Maester Orwyle were found guilty of treason and executed in the throne room. Otto Hightower, the chief architect of this usurpation, met the same fate. A stunned silence fell over the chamber. Jacaerys gasped softly, Lord Corlys's eyes widened, and even Rhaenys, usually so composed, looked visibly shocked. Simon Staunton paled considerably. You executed half the small council. Jacaerys finally stammered, his voice laced with disbelief. They were traitors, Prince Jacaerys, I stated simply. They conspired to deny the rightful queen her throne, leading to war and bloodshed. Justice demanded swift action. Rhaenyra, after a moment, composed herself. Her gaze, though still tinged with surprise, held a new depth of understanding, perhaps even a chilling appreciation. And Tywin Lannister? She asked, her voice quiet. He's in the dungeons, Your Grace, I replied. He proved more resistant to immediate answers regarding the royal treasury. However, with some persuasion, he revealed its current state. 1/4 is held in the Iron Bank, another 1/4 in Castle Rock, and the 1/3 in Oldtown. Lord Corlys leaned forward, his brow furrowed. That is vital information, Prince. You have delivered the Iron Throne and its coffers to Her Grace. What do you wish for, in return for such service? I looked directly at Rhaenyra, ignoring the others. My voice softened, but held an unwavering resolve. Your Grace, I have come to love your daughter, Princess Visenya. And she, me, I request her hand in marriage, with your blessing. A new silence descended, this one laced with surprise of a different kind. Rhaenyra's expression was unreadable for a moment, her gaze thoughtful. She considered, then, a faint smile touching her lips. Visenya spoke of you often, Prince Cregan. I had suspected something. She took a deep breath. You have proved yourself a man of honor and a formidable ally. My daughter could ask for no better partner. Yes, Prince Cregan, I accept your request. You have my blessing to marry Visenya. A wave of relief washed over me, a warmth spreading through my chest. Thank you, Your Grace, I said, a genuine smile finally breaking through my usual grim composure. I also have another request, I added, my voice hardening slightly as I returned to the matters of state. I wish to march to Oldtown. Rhaenyra frowned, a flicker of confusion on her face. Oldtown, Prince, you have already done more than enough for us. Your efforts have secured King's Landing and crippled the Greens. Rest, plan with us. Your Grace, there is more, I said, turning to Roddy. Roddy, show Her Grace the letters. Roddy produced the scrolls one had retrieved from the Greens' chambers and placed them before Rhaenyra. She took them, her brow furrowed, and began to read. As she did, her eyes widened, and a slow, building fury contorted her features. She passed them to Jacaerys, then to Rhaenys and Corlys. The chamber erupted in an uproar. This is outrageous, Jacaerys roared, slamming his fist on the table. A conspiracy spanning decades. They poisoned Emma. Rhaenys' voice was a chilling whisper, filled with a raw, agonizing grief. Prince Balon, the belly burst, my father assassination. Myrish pirates in Tarth, they engineered this all. Lord Corlys's face was purple with rage. The maesters, those conniving leeches. To think we trusted them with our lives, with the realm's health. The room was filled with the angry shouts and furious denunciations of the small council members. The sheer depth of the betrayal, the meticulous, long-term plotting by the maesters to pit Targaryen against Targaryen, was laid bare. It's not surprising, I stated, the anger in the room a tangible thing, but my own voice remained steady. Their whole order, the maesters, is fundamentally set to prove the world does not need magic. Then House Targaryen comes, with your dragons, walking, breathing proof of magic. They know they cannot face you head on. So they do what they do best. I leaned forward, my gaze sweeping over the furious faces of the council members. They are the first players in the Game of Thrones, and they have been winning since they started to play. Why do you think the North removed them from our keeps? They advise you, pour honeyed words into your ears, while subtly undermining your strength. I am not saying all of them are traitors, I clarified, but there is something called the Council of Light, which actively seeks to prevent any existence of magic. I continued, my voice gaining a sharper edge. And the next mistake your house made, which is allowing the faith to dictate the terms by which you should rule. The faith openly preaches that magic is an abomination in the name of the gods, and House Targaryen, which is walking magic, proclaims itself as defender of the faith. I don't know what to say about that. The Citadel and the Starry Sept. And where do these two powerhouses converge? Oldtown. That city is the root of all these problems. I straightened, my gaze now fixed on Rhaenyra. So, this is my request. No house south of the Neck can make a move against the Faith or the Citadel. But we of the Asgard are followers of the old gods. We do not have those restrictions. Give me some of your troops, and I will deliver the heads of whoever plots against House Targaryen. I will pull the roots of this conspiracy from the earth itself. Rhaenyra listened, her anger warring with her strategic mind. She argued for a while, raising concerns about a direct confrontation with the Citadel and the Faith, the potential for wider rebellion. Khaleesi supported her caution, while Jacaerys, fueled by youthful rage, seemed eager to agree with me. Rhaenys watched us both, her expression thoughtful. Eventually, Rhaenyra sighed, her gaze hardening with a new resolve. Very well, Prince Cregan. You have proven yourself a fearsome and loyal ally. You shall have the troops. March to Oldtown. Bring me justice. Your Grace, I continued, pressing my advantage while the council's fury at the Maesters' conspiracy was still fresh. While I march on Oldtown, I have another suggestion for the recovery of the realm's wealth. I looked at Rhaenyra, then briefly at Khaleesi, knowing he'd appreciate the pragmatism. Send King Consort, Daemon, along with the armies of the Riverlands, to the Westerlands. Have him attack the Lannisters. Recover that 1/3 of the royal treasury from Castle Rock. He can use the proceeds from the Lannister coffers to replenish the royal treasury and fund the realm's future. I paused, letting the strategic implications sink in. Once that is finished, once the Lannisters are dealt with and the treasury is secured, then we can make a move for the Baratheons. Rhaenyra's eyes narrowed slightly, weighing the audacity of the plan. Daemon's aggression was well known, and recovering the treasury was paramount. Khaleesi nodded in agreement, seeing the financial wisdom. Jacaerys, ever eager for action, seemed to approve. The room, still simmering from the Maester revelations, absorbed this new, aggressive strategy. It was a plan that struck at the heart of the Green's remaining power base and financial strength. 29 comments 0 vote. Planning. 133 AC. Cregan Stark Pav. The small council chamber was alive with the low hum of strategy and the rustle of maps. Queen Rhaenyra presided, her hand Khaleesi beside her. Rhaenys, Jacaerys, Roddy, Simon Staunton, and I completed the circle. The grim reality of the Treasury's state and the Maesters' pervasive conspiracy had solidified our resolve. So, Oldtown and the Westerlands, Rhaenyra began, her gaze moving between Khaleesi and me. How do we strike effectively? Oldtown first, I stated, my voice firm. We need to hit the root of this treachery. And we need to hit them hard and fast. No prolonged siege. Khaleesi stroked his magnificent white beard. Oldtown's defenses are ancient and formidable. The high towers are rich and have many sworn swords. They have stone walls, I countered, a cold smile forming on my lips. We have an ice dragon, and a different kind of war. I leaned forward. Your Grace, I suggest we send word to Dagon Greyjoy. A flicker of surprise passed over Rhaenyra's face, and even Khaleesi seemed taken aback. Dalton Greyjoy, Khaleesi repeated, his brows furrowed. The Lord Reaper. His loyalty is, famously mercurial. Precisely, I said, a glint in my eye. He smells blood and opportunity. This isn't about loyalty to the Iron Throne, not yet. This is about plunder and vengeance. Vengeance for what? Jacaerys asked, confused. The Maesters despise the Ironborn, I explained. They preach against their ways, their gods. Dagon will relish the chance to sack the Citadel, to burn the Starry Sept, to strike at the very heart of the faith and learning that demonizes his people. It's a war of opportunity for him, and vengeance for us. Rhaenys considered this, a faint smile playing on her lips. A devil's bargain, perhaps, but a pragmatic one. The Ironborn are unmatched at sea and in landing assaults. My plan is this, I continued. Send a raven to Pike. Tell Dalton Greyjoy that Prince Cregan Stark, with an ice dragon, is making his way to Oldtown. Tell him that we expect his fleet to move simultaneously, to meet us there. We will attack from land, with Saphira. He will attack from the sea. Oldtown will be caught in a vice. Rhaenyra looked at me, a mixture of wariness and grudging admiration in her eyes. You would trust the Ironborn to follow through. I trust them to take what they want, Your Grace, I clarified. And what they want is Oldtown's wealth and the opportunity to strike at the Citadel. Their goals align with ours for this one singular purpose. And the consequences? Khaleesi interjected, ever the strategist. A ravaged Oldtown, looted by Ironborn. The realm will cry foul. Let them, I said, shrugging. The realm cries foul now, too. They cry for Aegon, they cry for my swift justice. Better they cry for an Ironborn sacking than for a Targaryen burning. And the Citadel, with its vast knowledge and influence, needs to be purged of this festering conspiracy. A cleansing fire, or in this case, ice and salt. Rhaenyra looked to Khalees, then to Rhaenys. They exchanged silent glances. The idea was ruthless, brutal, but undeniably effective. It would send a clear message throughout the realm. Those who conspired against the Targaryens, even those seemingly untouchable by virtue of their ancient order or their piety, would face a reckoning unlike any seen before. Very well, Rhaenyra finally said, a grim set to her jaw. Send the Raven to Dalton Greyjoy. Make it clear the prize is Oldtown, and the target is the Citadel and the Hightowers, wealth. Offer him the right to plunder as he sees fit, within certain limits I will specify. And the Westerlands? Jacaerys asked, eager. Khalees, who had been listening intently, now spoke. Daemon is already at Harrenhal, your grace, gathering men from the Riverlands. I can send additional soldiers to him from the Crownlands forces. We will ensure he has overwhelming numbers. He will make quick work of the Westerlands and recover that treasury. The Lannisters will pay dearly for their insolence. I nodded, satisfied. It's a two-pronged attack, your grace. Swift, decisive, and hitting them where it hurts most. Their wealth, their power, and their pride. Once the Lannisters are broken and Oldtown neutralized, the Baratheons will have little choice but to bend the knee. Rhaenyra leaned back, a heavy sigh escaping her. The weight of the crown was evident on her face, but there was also a spark of fierce resolve. Then let it be done. Let the usurpers feel the true wrath of the dragon and the wolf. The rest of the day was consumed by logistics. Maps were unfurled, troop movements discussed, supply lines meticulously planned. The sheer scale of what we were attempting, a two-pronged assault on the Westerlands and Oldtown, was daunting, but the fury ignited by the Maesters' conspiracy fueled our resolve. After a midday meal that felt more like a hurried sustenance, I made my way to the training grounds. My wolf pack members were already at it, their northern steel glinting as they honed their skills. I joined them, sparring against one of the younger, eager recruits. The clang of steel, the grunt of effort, the precise movements of demon slayer breathing techniques, it was a familiar comfort, a stark contrast to the political machinations of the Red Keep. I disarmed my opponent with a flick of my wrist, his practice sword skittering across the dirt. Has anyone defeated you yet? A familiar voice asked, laced with a playful challenge. I turned, seeing Jacaerys Targaryen standing there, a thoughtful expression on his face. He'd grown from the boy I knew at the academy, but his eyes still held that earnest light. Not a warrior in the Seven Kingdoms right now who can defeat me, Jace, I said, with a slight smirk. Jace chuckled, then picked up a training sword. Shall we go around, then? As you wish, Prince, I replied, a flicker of genuine amusement. We saluted each other, and then the dance began. Jace was quick, much quicker than most men I'd faced in the south. He moved with a dragon's grace, his parries sharp, his thrusts precise. He pressed me hard, feinting, trying to find an opening, but my defense was unbreakable. My movements were fluid, effortless, honed by years of relentless training and the enhanced awareness of my Lycan blood. I deflected his blows with minimal effort, my own movements economical. He tried to draw me in, to trick me, but every attempt was met with an unyielding shield or a sword that seemed to appear from nowhere to block his path. His breath grew ragged, his movements a touch less sharp, while I remained perfectly composed. He was skilled, but I was on a different plane entirely. Finally, after what felt like an endless flurry of his attacks met by my impenetrable defense, Jace cried out, "Yield." His chest was heaving, sweat pouring down his face. I lowered my sword, offering him a hand. He took it, and I pulled him effortlessly to his feet. "Still as brutal as you used to fight in the academy," Jace said, panting, a rueful grin spreading across his face. "Can't you at least act like you're tired?" I chuckled. Where's the fun in that? We both laughed, the sound cutting through the grunts of the other sparring men. We walked over to a nearby bench, grabbing waterskins and settling down. "So," Jace said, taking a long drink, "how's my sister doing?" "Visenya as well," I replied, a softness entering my voice. "A little overwhelmed by everything, as you'd imagine, but she's strong. She's adapting quickly to the chaos of the South." I told him about her spirit, her resilience, and how she was trying to aid her mother despite her personal grief. "Good," Jace said, a genuine warmth in his eyes. Then I asked, "That's good to hear. And, how's Luke doing?" He sighed, the mirth fading slightly. "The fever is still a concern. He hasn't woken yet, but Maester Gerardis is tending to him carefully. He'll fight through it." We talked for a while longer, about the future of the dragons, the remaining loyalist houses, and the daunting task of rebuilding the realm. After a comfortable silence, Jace turned to me, his expression thoughtful. "Cregan, what do you truly think of the faith?" And, what should be done with it, now that the Greens' influence is broken? I considered his question carefully. This was a sensitive topic. They can't be eliminated, Jace, I said, not outright. Their hold on the common folk is too strong, too deeply ingrained. But they can be suppressed. We must ensure they have no say in ruling the realm. Their power comes from the crown, not the other way around. They can't get donations from lords or small folk in the form of coin or precious metals. If they receive donations, it should be in the form of grain or clothing, nothing more. This will starve their coffers and prevent them from funding their plots. Furthermore, I continued, their Grand Septon must be a man loyal to the crown, appointed by the Queen, not chosen by some shadowy council. Their laws must always yield to the king's, or queen's, justice. Any septon or high septon found preaching sedition or inciting rebellion should face the same justice as any lord. And their armed forces, the faith militant, they must never be permitted to rise again. Jace nodded slowly, his expression growing serious. No say in ruling, no gold donations, that's a bold stance, Cregan. It's the only stance, Jace, I concluded, my gaze firm. Magic exists. Dragons exist. Your house is living proof of it. If the faith continues to preach that as an abomination, then your house will always be in conflict with the very religion it claims to defend. It's a poison that's been festering for centuries, and it needs to be cut out. 19 comments 0 vote. Oldtown. 134 AC. Third person POV. It had been 1 moon since the small council meeting in King's Landing, a period of intense preparation and relentless marching. Now, Theon Stark and his formidable wolf pack were but a day's ride from the ancient city of Oldtown, the very heart of the Hightower's power and, as Cregan believed, the root of the Maester's insidious conspiracy. The air grew milder with each league they traveled south, losing the crisp bite of the north. The landscape softened, giving way to rolling hills and fertile fields, a stark contrast to the rugged, unforgiving lands they called home. Anticipation, a grim, eager beast, gnawed at Cregan. They made camp that night on a low ridge overlooking the distant glimmer of Oldtown, its towering high tower piercing the twilight sky like a needle. The men were quiet, their faces hardened by the long march, but their eyes held the familiar glint of warriors on the cusp of battle. Cregan himself stood apart, his gaze fixed on the distant city. He thought of Visenya, of his oath, and of the cold, calculated revenge he was about to unleash upon those who had conspired against her house. This was more than just war, it was a surgical strike. The next morning, the sun rose, painting the sky with hues of orange and gold. Cregan's host was already stirring, preparing for the final push. They broke camp with practiced efficiency, the clatter of steel and the low murmurs of men filling the dawn air. As they approached the outer walls of Oldtown, a raven, swift and dark, descended from the sky, landing on Roddy's outstretched arm. It carried a message, a single, terse scroll. Roddy quickly unrolled it and read. My prince, Roddy announced, his voice carrying clearly, Lord Dalton Greyjoy sends word. His fleet is in position. Ready to attack from the sea. A grim satisfaction settled over Cregan. The devil's bargain was holding. The Ironborn, true to their nature, were here for the plunder and the blood. Just as he absorbed the news, a mighty roar tore through the sky, a sound that vibrated in the very bones. Cregan looked up, his eyes narrowing. A dragon, a magnificent, shimmering blue dragon, its scales like polished sapphires, soared above the city. It was Tessarion, the Blue Queen, ridden by Daeron Targaryen. Saphira, who had been flying high above, a silent, watchful guardian, heard the challenge. A deep, guttural roar, filled with a chilling, predatory hunger, erupted from her. It was a sound that made the very air vibrate, a sound of pure, unadulterated ice and power. Tessarion, hearing the terrifying roar of the larger, unknown dragon, faltered. The blue dragon, perhaps sensing the overwhelming power of its unseen foe, or perhaps commanded by a rider whose courage had failed, turned its tail. With a desperate beat of its wings, Tessarion flew back towards the south, a streak of blue disappearing into the distant clouds. It was a retreat, a clear sign of fear. Cregan's lips curled into a cold smile. Saphira had done her job. The psychological impact of an ice dragon was already proving its worth. Saphira, Cregan commanded mentally, his voice resonating through their bond. Blow open the main gates of Oldtown. And then, urges, Saphira. Chase that blue dragon. Capture it. Do not kill it. Saphira's mental assent was a powerful surge of cold determination. With a deafening roar, she dove towards the city, a white blur against the clear morning sky. Below, the ground trembled as Saphira unleashed a torrent of dark blue flame. The massive wooden gates of Oldtown, ancient and thick, groaned under the impossible cold. They splintered, cracked, and then exploded inwards, shards of frozen timber scattering like shrapnel. Simultaneously, from the sea, the blare of ironborn horns filled the air. A vast fleet of longships, their black sails emblazoned with the golden kraken, swarmed towards the harbor. The Ironborn, true to their word, were attacking from the sea. Wolf pack, Cregan roared, drawing his sword. For glory, charge! With a savage yell, the 300 men surged forward, a disciplined wave of black armor and northern steel pouring through the shattered gates. The defenders on the walls, caught utterly by surprise by the dual assault, scrambled in panic. Inside the city, chaos erupted. The wolf pack moved like a blizzard, their demon slayer breathing techniques allowing them to fight with impossible speed and endurance. They were a whirlwind of steel, cutting down every Hightower guard, every city watchman, every levy that dared to stand in their path. Saphira, having demolished the gate, was already soaring after Tessarion, a ghostly white hunter pursuing its blue prey. Her presence in the sky alone was enough to sow terror among the Hightower forces. From the harbor, the screams of the Ironborn raiders mingled with the cries of the Oldtown defenders. Dalton Greyjoy's men, brutal and efficient, swarmed ashore, their axes and swords gleaming. They were not interested in holding ground, only in plunder and destruction. The Hightower forces were caught in a vice. Their attention divided, their morale shattered by the sudden, overwhelming assault from both land and sea, they offered little coordinated resistance. The streets became a bloody labyrinth, a testament to the North's brutal efficiency. Cregan fought at the vanguard, his sword a blur of motion. He moved with a cold, almost detached precision, every strike fatal, every parry effortless. He was a storm of steel, a harbinger of the North's wrath. Roddy, leading a detachment of the wolf pack, was a whirlwind of destruction, his axe a blur as he cut down Hightower knights. "They're soft, my prince," he roared, his voice filled with savage glee. "Soft as summer snow." The blue flames of Saphira, though distant now, still cast a chilling light on the battle, a reminder of the power that had broken their gates and hunted their dragon. Men caught in the lingering cold of her breath froze where they stood, their faces contorted in silent screams. The Hightower defenders, once proud and confident behind their ancient walls, now broke and fled, their discipline crumbling. The city was falling, swiftly and brutally. The cries of the dying, the clash of steel, the distant roar of the Ironborn, all blended into a symphony of conquest. Oldtown, the bastion of the faith and the citadel, was being consumed. The battle turned into a rout. The Hightower banners fell, replaced by the direwolf and the kraken. The initial resistance had been fierce, but short-lived, overwhelmed by the sheer ferocity and unexpected nature of the attack. With the city largely subdued, Cregan led his core force directly towards the Hightower, the colossal beacon that dominated the city's skyline. This was the seat of their power, the home of the conspirators. The Hightower itself offered a final, desperate resistance. Guards, knights, and even household servants, armed with whatever they could find, tried to bar their path. But the wolf pack was relentless. They breached the inner sanctum, their boots echoing on polished marble floors. In the Grand Hall, they found Hobart Hightower, the Lord of Oldtown, surrounded by his family. He stood defiant, though fear flickered in his eyes. "Lord Hobart Hightower," Cregan stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "You stand accused of treason against the rightful Queen Rhaenyra Targaryen, and of conspiring with the Maesters to undermine House Targaryen for decades." Hobart, his face pale, spat. "You are a barbarian, a savage. You have no right here. We serve the true king, Aegon." "Your true king is dead, Lord Hightower," Cregan replied, his gaze cold. "And your loyalty has cost you everything." He turned to Roddy. "Secure Lord Hobart and his family." The wolf pack moved. Hobart and his male kin of age were quickly seized. "All male line of age," Cregan commanded, his voice echoing in the Grand Hall, "are to be executed. Here, now." A gasp of horror went through the Hightower family. Hobart roared in protest, but it was futile. One by one, the Hightower men, from Lord Hobart himself to his adult sons and nephews, were brought before Cregan. He personally oversaw their swift, brutal end. "The children," Cregan then ordered, his voice chillingly calm, "the male children, are to be sent to the wall. Every last one. Let them serve the Night's Watch, and forget the names of their treacherous fathers." Then, he turned to the Hightower women, their faces white with terror and grief. "The women," he decreed, "are to be sent to the Silent Sisters. Let them live a life of penance, burying the dead, and contemplating the ruin their house brought upon itself." The Hightower, once a symbol of ancient power and learning, was now a testament to the North's unforgiving justice. Its ruling line was broken, its future erased. Just as the last of the Hightower male line fell, a raven arrived, its message urgent. "My prince," a wolf pack member reported, "a scout from Saphira. Tessarion has been injured. Darren Targaryen has fallen unconscious from the fight. They are down in the hills to the south. Cregan felt a flicker of satisfaction. Good. Send a few of our swiftest pack members to their location. Capture them. Bring them back alive. Soon after, a figure emerged from the chaos of the city, walking with a swagger that was unmistakable. Dalton Greyjoy, the Lord Reaper, approached, his eyes gleaming with a savage triumph, his armor splattered with blood and grime. Prince Cregan, Dalton greeted, a wide, predatory grin on his face. A fine day for a raid, wouldn't you say? Lord Reaper, Cregan returned, nodding. The gates were accommodating. Dalton laughed, a harsh, guttural sound. And the coffers of Oldtown are even more so. My men are having a grand time. Never seen so much gold in one place, outside of King's Landing, perhaps. He gestured back towards the city. Your ice dragon certainly cleared the way. Never thought I'd see the day a dragon ran from another. Saphira is unique, Cregan stated, a hint of pride in his voice. She serves a unique purpose. Indeed, Dalton said, his eyes glinting. So, the Hightowers are dealt with. What's next for the Lord Reaper's pleasure? The Starry Sept, Cregan commanded, his voice cold and precise. And the High Septon. Destroy it, Lord Reaper. Burn it to the ground. And kill anyone who stands in your way. The Faith has meddled in affairs of state for too long. Their power, their influence, ends here. Dalton's grin widened, a gleam of pure, unadulterated glee in his eyes. The Sept, and the High Septon. My prince, you speak my language. My men will relish this. The drowned god will be pleased with such a sacrifice. He turned, barking orders to his men, who, with renewed fervor, began to march towards the towering Sept. The sounds of the Sept's destruction soon echoed through the city, the crash of falling stone, the roar of flames, and the screams of those who tried to defend it. The High Septon, the voice of the faith, would meet his end in the very heart of his power. The next day, with the Starry Sept a smoldering ruin, Cregan made his way to the citadel. Its imposing, ancient walls seemed to mock him, a symbol of the Maester's entrenched power. He entered the vast courtyard, his wolf pack at his back. He commanded all the Maesters in the tower to come outside. They emerged, a bewildered, shuffling throng of grey robes and chains, their faces a mixture of fear and academic indignation. You will all remain here, Cregan stated, his voice echoing in the courtyard. Half of the wolf pack. Search every corner of the citadel. Every scroll, every book, every hidden compartment, every secret room. Leave no stone unturned. We are looking for any letters, any documents, any evidence of conspiracy. The search was meticulous, painstaking work that lasted for 3 weeks. The wolf pack, trained for exhaustive searches and relentless pursuit, left no corner unexamined. They unearthed hidden passages, secret archives, and countless incriminating documents that the Maesters had tried to conceal. During this time, Cregan ordered all the Maesters to be confined within the citadel itself, effectively locking them up within their own institution. They were prisoners in their own halls, their power stripped, their influence nullified. Once the search was complete, and the vast trove of documents had been gathered, Cregan dedicated himself to reviewing every letter, every scroll, every piece of correspondence. It was a monumental task, a week of relentless reading, sifting through decades of carefully coded messages and subtle manipulations. The depth of the conspiracy was staggering. The Maesters, particularly a shadowy inner circle, had indeed been playing a long game, subtly undermining Targaryen rule, fomenting dissent, and even orchestrating accidents and illnesses that had plagued the royal family for generations. The names, the dates, the methods, it was all laid bare. The following day, with the evidence irrefutable and the identities of the conspirators clear, Cregan returned to the citadel. He ordered every Maester who was part of this vast conspiracy to be brought out. Their faces were pale, their eyes filled with a desperate, dawning realization. You have sought to extinguish magic from the world, Cregan stated, his voice resonating with cold fury. You have plotted against kings and queens. You have murdered and manipulated from the shadows. Your order, your very existence, is a blight upon this realm. One by one, he executed them, his sword rising and falling with grim finality. Their heads, symbols of their supposed wisdom and their actual treachery, were then placed on spikes outside the citadel, a stark warning to any who would dare to plot against the crown or the very essence of magic in Westeros. With Oldtown secured, cleansed of its corruption, and the Maesters' conspiracy laid bare, Cregan's mission was complete. He gave the order to prepare for departure. The wolf pack, weary but triumphant, began their march back to King's Landing, a new chapter in the dance of the dragons having been brutally written. 5 comments 0 vote. Small Council Meeting 2. 134 AC. Third-person POV. It took Cregan Stark and his weary, but triumphant, wolf pack a full moon to return to King's Landing. The march back was less hurried than their journey south, allowing for a more deliberate pace, but the weight of their recent actions, the sheer scale of the victory at Oldtown, settled heavily upon them. The city they returned to was calmer, more orderly, its streets now patrolled by gold cloaks loyal to the Queen, and the Red Keep firmly under the control of the northern contingent. After 2 days of much-needed rest, allowing the men to recover from the relentless campaign and Cregan to shed the last vestiges of his Lycan transformation's drain, a small council meeting was convened. The air in the chamber was different now, charged not with desperation, but with the quiet hum of a realm beginning to reclaim itself. The attendees were a mix of familiar faces and new additions. Queen Rhaenyra sat at the head of the table, her expression a blend of relief and grim determination. To her right sat Curlys Velaryon, hand of the Queen, his face etched with the burdens of state. Rhaenys Targaryen, Lady of Driftmark, sat beside him, her presence a powerful symbol of the Targaryen strength. Prince Jacaerys, heir to the Iron Throne, sat opposite his mother, his gaze earnest and attentive. New faces included Maester Gerardys, a loyalist maester who had replaced the executed Orwyle, his demeanor cautious and observant. Ser Luther Largent, a seasoned knight, now served as the acting Lord Commander of the Kingsguard, his armor gleaming. And finally, Cregan Stark, Prince of Winterfell and Lord of Asgard, sat at Rhaenyra's left, his presence a stark reminder of the North's decisive intervention. Roddy Dustin, though not a formal council member, was present at Cregan's insistence, a silent, watchful presence. "We begin," Queen Rhaenyra announced, her voice clear, with Prince Cregan's report on Oldtown. "Tell us, Prince, what transpired?" Cregan leaned forward, his voice calm and measured, detailing the swift assault, the dual attack by land and sea. He spoke of Saphira's terrifying arrival, the retreat of Tessarion, and the subsequent destruction of the city gates. He recounted the brutal efficiency of the wolf pack. He described the fall of the Hightower, the capture of Lord Hobart and his family. He did not shy away from the grim details of the executions. Lord Hobart Hightower and all male members of his line of age were put to the sword, Cregan stated, his gaze unwavering. Their children, the boys, have been sent to the wall. The women, to the Silent Sisters. A collective gasp went around the table. Maester Gerardys blanched, and Ser Luther Largent's hand instinctively went to his sword hilt. Even Jacaerys looked disturbed, though Rhaenys remained impassive, her eyes fixed on Cregan. You extinguished the entire Hightower line?" Jacaerys asked, his voice barely a whisper. "The second oldest house in the Seven Kingdoms." "They were traitors, Prince Jacaerys," Cregan replied, his voice devoid of remorse. "They plotted against your house for generations. Their influence, their wealth, and their very existence were a threat to the stability of the realm and the legitimacy of the crown. The root of the conspiracy had to be severed completely." Curlys stroked his beard, his expression thoughtful. "A harsh hand, Prince, but perhaps a necessary one. The Hightowers were deeply entrenched." "And Daeron Targaryen?" Rhaenyra asked, her voice tinged with concern. "What of him and Tessarion?" "Tessarion was injured during the fight with Saphira," Cregan explained. "She fled, and Daeron fell unconscious. I sent men to capture them. They are both secured. Daeron is recovering from his injuries, and Tessarion is being held in a secure cavern outside the city, under Saphira's watchful eye." Rhaenyra sighed, a flicker of relief mixed with sorrow crossing her face. "So, the Hightower line is extinguished. What then, of Oldtown itself? It is a city of immense wealth and strategic importance. It cannot be left without a lord." "Indeed," Curlys agreed. "But who can we trust to hold such a prize, given its history?" Cregan spoke, his gaze falling on Rhaenyra. "Your Grace, I have a proposal regarding Oldtown, and indeed, the future of the realm." "Daeron Targaryen." Jacaerys frowned. "My uncle. After he rode with the usurper." "He was a boy, Prince Jacaerys," Cregan countered. "Used by Otto Hightower. He is a Targaryen, and he rode a dragon. He is a symbol. Make him Lord of Oldtown. But with conditions." Rhaenys leaned forward, intrigued. "What conditions?" "He must relinquish all claims to the Iron Throne, for himself and his descendants. No descendants of his will be given a dragon," Cregan stated. "And he must take a new name. A new house. One that signifies his new loyalty and his break from the Hightowers. He will be a loyal vassal, tied to the crown by blood, but without the ambition for the throne." Rhaenyra considered this, her brow furrowed. A Targaryen on the Hightower seat, it would certainly send a message. And remove a potential rival claim. It would also keep a dragon in the south, loyal to the crown, Cregan added. And prevent the Hightower name from ever rising again. After a brief discussion, the council, though wary of the implications, agreed to the proposal for Daeron, seeing the strategic advantages. Now, the Citadel, Rhaenyra said, her voice hardening. The evidence you brought, Prince Cregan, was damning. What do we do with an institution that has plotted against my house for generations? They cannot be eliminated entirely, Your Grace, Cregan stated. Their knowledge is vast, and the realm needs maesters for healing and communication. But their power must be broken. Their influence over kings and lords must end. How do you propose we do that? Maester Gerardis asked, his voice trembling slightly. We replace them, Cregan said, his gaze sweeping over the council. We build a new institution. A college, like Winterhold, but in the south. Where future lords and ladies study, one dedicated to true learning, innovation, and the spread of knowledge, not its hoarding or manipulation. Curlys looked skeptical. Build a new college? Where? And who would staff it? The maesters are the only ones with such knowledge. There is currently a castle in Westeros, larger than any other, without a lord, Cregan announced, a glint in his eye. A place tainted by blood and shadow, but ripe for new purpose. A place that can become a sanctuary for learning and innovation, a beacon for the south. Which castle? Jacaerys asked, leaning forward eagerly. Harrenhal, Cregan stated, the name hanging in the air. A collective gasp went around the table. Harrenhal, the cursed castle, a ruin since Aegon's conquest, a symbol of hubris and destruction. Harrenhal, Rhaenys exclaimed, her eyes wide. That place is cursed, and too vast to ever properly staff or defend. It is vast, yes, Cregan agreed. But its size makes it perfect for a new kind of institution. And its curse is a story, easily rewritten. We will make it a sanctuary for reading, for learning, for innovation. We will relieve every maester of their oaths to the Citadel and make them teach at this new college at Harrenhal. Those who refuse will be dealt with. This will be a place where younger minds are encouraged to think, to innovate, to question, not just to memorize dogma. And its defense? Curlys asked, still wary. We make a new rule, Cregan declared, his voice firm. Anyone who ever makes a move against this college, their whole lineage will be put to the sword. A warning etched in blood, just as the Hightowers learned. Harrenhal will become a symbol of the Crown's commitment to true knowledge, and its unwavering defense of it. Arguments erupted around the table. Maester Gerardis protested the dissolution of the Citadel's authority. Curlys worried about the logistics and the cost. Jacaerys was intrigued but hesitant. Rhaenys, however, seemed to weigh the strategic implications. It would break the Citadel's monopoly, Rhaenys mused aloud. And create a new power base loyal directly to the Crown, free from the old machinations. Rhaenyra listened to the arguments, her gaze moving between Cregan and the other council members. The idea was radical, unprecedented, but it offered a solution to a problem that had plagued her house for generations. After a long, heated debate, where Cregan calmly countered every objection with logic and the undeniable evidence of the maesters' treachery, Rhaenyra finally raised a hand, silencing the room. It is a bold plan, Prince Cregan, she said, her voice firm. But a necessary one. We will establish the new college at Harrenhal. Maester Gerardis, you will oversee the transition. You will begin drafting the decrees to relieve the maesters of their oaths and to establish the new rules for Harrenhal. The Citadel will remain, but its power will be broken. Its influence will be replaced by a new beacon of learning, loyal to the Crown. A collective sigh, a mix of resignation and grudging acceptance, went around the table. Cregan felt a surge of satisfaction. Another piece of the future was being reshaped. Now, Cregan said, turning to Curlys, what happened in the Westerlands? Did Daemon succeed in recovering the treasury? Curlys nodded, a grim satisfaction on his face. Indeed, Prince Cregan, Daemon has won a decisive victory against the Lannisters. Jason Lannister was put to the sword. Jacaerys looked surprised. Jason Lannister, dead. Aye, Curlys confirmed. Daemon was thorough. His son, Loren Lannister, is but 5 years old. He will be made Warden of the West, with a loyal regent appointed by the Crown. And the terms of surrender? Rhaenyra asked. All the wealth in the Lannister treasury is to be sent directly to the Iron Throne, Curlys stated. And they will pay double the taxes for the next 10 years. A heavy price, but a necessary one for their treason. Daemon will be back by next week, Rhaenyra added, a faint smile touching her lips. He sends word that the Westerlands are now secured. Excellent, Cregan said. That leaves the Stormlands. Barros Baratheon, Rhaenyra said, her voice hardening, must answer for his defiance and his refusal to aid my son, Lucerys. And for his overt support of the usurper. The council discussed the strategy for the Stormlands. Given the swiftness of the victories in Oldtown and the Westerlands, and the psychological impact of the dragons, a direct, overwhelming assault was deemed most effective. The conclusion was swift and brutal. Barros Baratheon will be put to the sword, Rhaenyra declared, her voice firm. And to secure the Stormlands, and unite the houses, my son, Aegon the Younger, will be marrying one of Boros's daughters. He will then be made Lord of Storm's End, ruling as a loyal vassal under the crown. The pieces were falling into place. The dance of the dragons, which should have consumed the realm in fire and blood for years, was being brought to a swift, decisive end, reshaped by the cold, calculating foresight of a Stark from Asgard. 15 comments 0 vote. King's Landing. 134 AC. Third person POV. It took a week for Prince Daemon Targaryen, the rogue prince, to return to King's Landing. His arrival was met with a fervent reception, a stark contrast to the grim tension that had permeated the city before Cregan's arrival. The Gold Cloaks, many of whom had served under Daemon in the past and had now swiftly declared for Rhaenyra, were particularly enthusiastic, their cheers echoing through the streets as Caraxes, his red dragon, landed in the dragon pit. Daemon, ever the showman, dismounted with a flourish, his dark eyes sweeping over the cheering crowds. He greeted Queen Rhaenyra first, a long, tender embrace between husband and wife, then embraced Jacaerys, his heir. He shared a knowing nod with Rhaenys and a firm handshake with Curlys, acknowledging their efforts in holding Dragonstone. After the initial, public greetings, Daemon made his way into the Red Keep. The small council and other key figures gathered in the throne room to formally welcome him. He exchanged brief, sharp words with Maester Gerardys, a curt nod to Esser Luther Largent, and a dismissive glance at Simon Staunton. His eyes, however, lingered on Cregan Stark. Later that evening, after the formal pleasantries had concluded and the Red Keep had settled into a cautious calm, Daemon found Cregan in a private solar, a goblet of wine in his hand, staring out at the city lights. Prince Daemon, Cregan began, his voice calm. Daemon turned, a wry smile playing on his lips. Prince Cregan, or should I say, the wolf of Winterfell who brought the dragon's breath to King's Landing. He raised his goblet in a mock salute. I hear you've been busy. Oldtown, the Hightowers, Maesters, and a dragon larger than Vagar. Cregan inclined his head. The realm required a firm hand, Prince. And a swift one. The Westerlands, I hear, required similar persuasion. Daemon chuckled, a low, dangerous sound. The Lannisters are rich, but soft. Their gold was easier to extract than their teeth. Though I confess, the thought of their treasury being emptied for Rhaenyra's coffers brought a certain satisfaction. He took a sip of wine. You moved with remarkable speed. And with Saphira, the ice dragon. I admit, I did not expect that. Asgard has its own ways, Cregan replied. And its own power. My oath to princess is absolute. An oath, Daemon mused, his eyes narrowing slightly. A powerful thing, for a Stark. And for a Targaryen. He paused, then, I hear you're to marry Visenya. With the queen's blessing, Cregan confirmed. She is a fine woman and I love her, Prince Daemon. Daemon nodded, a flicker of something akin to approval in his gaze. She is my stepdaughter. A good match, perhaps. A wolf and a dragon. A strong alliance, if the realm survives. He looked back out the window. This war, it could have dragged on for years. You cut it short. Drastically short. A bold strategy, Prince. The Maesters, conspiracy needed to be rooted out, Cregan stated. And the faith's influence over the crown curtailed. Oldtown was the nexus of both. Daemon turned back, his eyes sharp. I never trusted those grey rats, but I didn't imagine this long game from them, so in the end Otto was just a tool. Otto was a tool, Prince Daemon, Cregan said, his voice cold. A willing one, yes, but a tool nonetheless. The Maesters' agenda is to eliminate magic, to control knowledge, to ensure the realm is ruled by men, not dragons. They played a long game. From poisoning Queen Aemma to the accidents that befell others. They sought to weaken House Targaryen from within, to make us fight ourselves. Daemon's jaw tightened, a dangerous glint in his eyes. I always suspected them, whispering in the ears of kings, always so wise. But to conspire to that extent. He shook his head. You have done the realm a great service, Prince Cregan. One that few would have dared, or even understood. He raised his goblet again, this time with genuine respect. To the Wolf of Winterfell. And to the future of the realm. Cregan raised his own, unfilled, hand in acknowledgement. The conversation continued for a while longer, a rare moment of shared understanding between two fiercely independent and formidable men. 3 days later, the small council convened once more, the air now thick with the scent of victory and the anticipation of finality. The main topic, the Stormlands. Queen Rhaenyra, looking more confident than she had in moons, presided. The Westerlands are secured, the treasury recovered. Oldtown is purged. Now, we turn our attention to the Stormlands. Borros Baratheon defied my son, Lucerys, and declared for the usurper. That cannot stand. Curlys, ever the pragmatist, laid out the maps. Storm's End is a formidable fortress, your grace. But with the Lannisters broken, and the high towers extinguished, Barrows stands alone. His allies are gone. Demon, Rhaenyra said, looking at her husband, you will lead this final campaign. Take a significant portion of the Crownland armies. And Jacaerys, you will go with him. Ride Vermax. Show the Stormlands the might of the rightful heir. Jacaerys's eyes lit up. Yes, mother, I am ready. We will not burn Storm's End to the ground, Rhaenyra continued, her voice firm. But Barrows Baratheon will answer for his treason. And to ensure the Stormlands' loyalty, my son, Aegon the Younger, will marry one of Boros's daughters and be made Lord of Storm's End. The plan was swift, decisive, and familiar. The council quickly agreed. The war, which had begun with such uncertainty, was now being brought to a brutal, efficient close. But the peace was fragile. 3 days after Daemon and Jacaerys left, a subtle unease began to stir in the lower districts of King's Landing. Whispers, like tendrils of smoke, curled through the alleys and taverns. Whispers of Valyria's doom, of dragonfire, of the arrogance of those who rode the beasts. Then, the murmurs became voices, and the voices coalesced around a single, charismatic figure. A man known only as the Shepherd began preaching on Cobbler's Square. He was a gaunt, wild-eyed man, with a voice like thunder and a terrifying conviction. Hear me, good folk of King's Landing. The Shepherd cried, his voice echoing off the surrounding buildings. The dragons have returned, and with them, the doom. Crowds, initially curious, then wary, began to gather. He spoke of the Valyrian freehold, of its fiery end, of the arrogant dragonlords consumed by their own power. The Targaryens preach of peace, of order. He boomed, his arms flailing. But look around you. What have they brought but fire and blood? Brother against brother, uncle against nephew. And now, the dragons are back, darkening our skies, reminding us of the hellfire that consumes all. His words struck a chord, tapping into ancient fears deeply embedded in the Andal population. The faith, whose authority Cregan had so recently undermined in Oldtown, had long preached against magic and abominations. The Shepherd, though not of the official faith, echoed their deepest tenets. Only by cleansing King's Landing of dragons and their masters, the Shepherd railed, his voice rising to a fever pitch, could the Seven Kingdoms avoid a doom similar to that of Valyria. They are demons, abominations. They bring destruction. The crowd, growing larger by the hour, began to chant with him, their fear turning into a volatile, dangerous fervor. The Gold Cloaks, accustomed to routine arrests and petty squabbles, found themselves faced with a swelling tide of religious fanaticism. They tried to disperse the crowd, to arrest the Shepherd, but their numbers were too few, and the people's anger too great. Stones began to fly, shouts of, "No more dragons!" and, "Valyria!" rent the air. The unrest spread like wildfire from Cobbler's Square, spilling into the adjacent streets, fueled by years of pent-up resentment, economic hardship, and the deep-seated fear of Targaryen power. Cregan, within the Red Keep, felt the shift in the city's pulse. He heard the distant shouts, the growing cacophony of a city on the brink. He knew, with a chilling certainty, that this was not merely a riot. This was something far more dangerous. This was the dark underbelly of the South's fear, unleashed. And he was the only one in King's Landing with the ruthlessness to face it. The distant roar of the crowd grew, no longer a mere murmur but a rising tide of collective anger. From the Red Keep, Theon Stark could feel the city's pulse quicken, a dangerous fever taking hold. The shouts, once individual pleas, now coalesced into a unified, ominous chant. No more dragons. Valyria. Doom. He watched from a high window, his face grim. The Gold Cloaks, even those loyal to the Queen, were overwhelmed. Their attempts to disperse the gathering were futile, like trying to stem a river with a cupped hand. The Shepherd's fiery words had struck a deeper chord than any believed possible. Cregan knew this was no ordinary riot, no mere outburst of discontent. This was fear, centuries old, weaponized. It was the fear of the Targaryens, of their unnatural power, of the very beasts that symbolized their claim. And that fear, once unleashed, would demand blood. His mind raced, calculating the immediate threats. Rhaenyra was within the Red Keep, protected by the Kingsguard and the loyal Gold Cloaks. But the dragons in the dragon pit were vulnerable. Young, untrained, and often confined, they were the very target of the Shepherd's venom. He turned from the window, his expression hardening into the cold, resolute mask of the North. His orders would be swift, brutal, and utterly necessary. Roddy. Cregan's voice cut through the nervous quiet of the Red Keep's inner chambers, sharp and clear. Gather the wolf pack, every man. Roddy was at his side in an instant, his sword already seeming to hum in anticipation. My prince. The dragon pit, Cregan commanded, his eyes burning with an icy intensity. The crowds are getting restless, and their eyes are on the dragons. We cannot allow them to reach them. We guard them, my prince. Roddy asked, understanding dawning in his eyes. More than guard, Roddy, Cregan stated, his gaze meeting his trusted companions. We secure them, and we release their chains. Roddy's eyes widened slightly in surprise, but he didn't question the order. Release their chains. But, they are wild. They are dragons, Cregan corrected, his voice a low growl. And they are far safer unleashed, ready to defend themselves, than trapped and vulnerable to a mob. They are living symbols of power, Roddy. Let them remember that. But the damage, my prince. Maester Gerardis stammered from a corner, his face pale with alarm. Unchained dragons within the city walls, the destruction could be immense. Cregan spared him a cold glance. The destruction of a few buildings is preferable to the death of the Queen's dragons, Maester. And preferable to the total loss of control. A frightened mob, armed with pitchforks and hate, is a far greater threat than a dragon defending its lair. The gold cloaks are struggling to hold the gates, my prince, Sir Luther Largent reported, his voice strained. The numbers are swelling. They have breached the outer walls in places. Then the wolf pack moves now, Cregan declared, his decision final. Roddy, take half the pack. Go directly to the dragon pit. Secure it. Release the chains on the dragons. Make sure they are free to defend themselves. No one, not the mob, not even those trying to help, is to enter that pit once the dragons are unchained. And the other half, my prince? Roddy asked, his gaze unwavering. They stay with me, Cregan stated, drawing his sword. We will lead a detachment of loyal gold cloaks. We will meet this shepherd. This madness began with his words, it will end with his silence. Roddy nodded, a fierce light in his eyes. As you command, my prince. He barked orders, and the wolf pack, moving with silent efficiency, split, one half following Roddy towards the looming dome of the dragon pit, the other assembling around Cregan. The decision was made. No more passive defense. The time for deliberation was over. The Wolf of Winterfell would meet the shepherd's madness with cold steel and unleashed fire, hoping to quell the riot before it truly consumed King's Landing.